Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
You are listening to the Flagship Podcast with your hosts, Joe Lanza.
Money. That's how you pronounce. Rich, I want you to give me one. Money.
Is it Money? Money.
Money. Money. Not even, it's not money.
Money.
It's not Monet. It's money. 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 We have to pronounce things properly here.
Oh, of course, yeah. On this show, yeah, we're not going to fuck around on this show.
Money. 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 It's money. Say it, Rich.
Rich Craich.
I'm Rockin' Rich. He's Jammin' Joe. We got a great show for you.
Blade Job and Chair Shotter here.
Yeah, ding, 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 ding. We got like bells ringing every time.
Yeah.
And we are live on the Flagship Podcast. I am Rich, and he is Joe. And just wanted to point out that you heard an intro there, the famous Monet intro of the Flagship Podcast that I promised would never come back. I promised it was retired forever, never to see the light of day ever again. But we had a very simple request from one of our longtime listeners. I Am the Table is this fella's name on our Discord, and he had a simple request. He showed up to Dynamite yesterday with a sign that said, please, bring the Money intro back to the Flagship. And you may have seen that sign last night on Dynamite from the, what the hell's the name of this? The Brady JQ, whatever the fuck, musical arena, whatever the hell it was. If you were watching the show, you may have seen that sign up there in the rafters, up there in the hard cam, up there, wherever. Unfortunately, the sign was confiscated before I Am the Table could get it into the building. Now, Joe, ridiculous, right? How many dumbass Jim Cornette signs?
You're leaving out the. Well, hold on. You're leaving out the key point. They told him the reason given for confiscating the sign was you can't promote a podcast.
Right.
So that's the key piece of information.
Correct. Sorry, I forgot to point that out. Yes, you cannot promote a podcast with your sign on AEW Dynamite.
Right. And the sign said, bring back the Money intro to the Flagship. So they took his sign away. But it's a little peculiar because the Cornette signs get in all the time. The cardboard cutouts of Dave LaGreca's head. How many times have you seen that on a AEW show?
Hundreds at this point.
Yeah, with the busted open guys and everything. So, yeah, I don't know. Is there something to it? Is there nothing to it? I don't know.
Well, I will say I do have an update that I Am the Table decided to try to go to today's show, to Collision at the same arena,
right.
And showed up with a sign that said Joe Lanza has never had the flu, and then it was a little picture of the Fact and Fiction guy. I don't know. I forget what the guy's name is. The Fact and Fiction guy. But,
well, it's a fact. Joe Lanza has never.
Regardless of whether it's true or false. If you've had the flu or not, you claim that you've never had the flu, whatever, fact or fiction, does not matter.
Hard to believe. Why is it so hard to believe?
Either way, here's what I Am the Table says. So the sign says Joe Lanza has never had the flu, walks in to the arena. He says, quote, the guy at the entrance looked at it and went, nah, pitch it. And it is done. That sign also did not make it in to the building.
Photographic evidence of both signs, by the way. Yeah, I don't know. I guess Jim Cornette signs are good enough for AEW, but Flagship signs are just no bueno. Doesn't make much sense to me. But I don't know who's making that call. Has security been told no podcasts? Our little humble podcast, would a security guard even be aware of this podcast?
No way,
That's
right?
my question.
Right.
So just doing a little bit of deductive reasoning, you would think that the call would have to be coming from elsewhere, right? Someone who's privy to the Flagship Podcast, who knows who Joe Lanza is, right?
Are you on a list? Like, is there a list? You know what I mean? The security guard's got a list, and it's like no swears, no, WWE related signs, no,
Right.
the Flagship Podcast / Joe Lanza / like
I guess so.
/ Money, the Flagship. It's bizarre. It's definitely pretty weird.
It wouldn't be the only no bueno list that we're on with that company, but it's plausible.
Someone said they confiscated the sign and put it in the same folder as our media call invites, which are
I don't know. I mean, it just blows my mind. Are they maybe okay? Are they scared that if they take Cornette signs, that Cornette will make it a thing, the way that we're kind of doing right? See, we're doing it tongue in cheek. Right.
Yeah, I honestly don't. I earnestly don't care. I am glad that I Am the Table tried to get some signs in. I think it's kind of funny.
Thank you, I Am the Table.
And
yes,
I decided to show solidarity with our brother, I Am the Table. We brought the money intro back. He tried to get a sign in there. He put the effort. He put the work. Put it on the paper. Showed it with his heart. Tried to get in the building. It didn't happen. So you know what? I rewarded him with the return of the money intro, which has since been deleted, by the way. It is gone and will never come back again for a while, unless everybody brings signs. Don't do that. But if you do it, you can do that if you want. No, so yeah, I don't honestly care that much. That it doesn't bother me that much that they confiscated.
We're having fun with it.
Yeah,
we're having fun
right. This Cornette universe would not have fun with it. They would.
Right. So that's my point. Like, in all seriousness, if they took Cornette signs, that those people would go right to Jim. They'd probably add him from the building, and then they would make a whole big thing of it on their show and everything else. So could it be a situation where it's like, maybe they have a no podcast promotion policy with their signs, right? But it's like, when it comes to Jim, let's not rattle the cage. Let's not, poke the wasp nest, so to speak. Could be. I don't know how that would explain all the Dave LaGreca heads.
Yeah, I really want those to go. You know what I fucking hate? The Dave LaGreca heads. Those annoy the hell out of me. And especially when that boob is saying what he said today about his company, about AEW and about TNA, which we'll get to a little bit later. That makes it all. I get the Cornette one. You don't want to, like you said, poke that hornet's nest. Whatever. The LaGreca heads, why are we doing LaGreca heads? What's going on here? The key, though, Joe, is to integrate your name or the podcast into some obscure Final Fantasy thing. You know what I mean? And then
right.
If you said Dragon Quest 3 is better than the money intro or something, maybe it would get in. But as it stands right now, it doesn't get in. I don't know if Dragon Quest 3 is even a game.
Look, we come on here and
it is. Dragon Quest 3 is a game. So
we just tell it like it is about AEW, good, bad, indifferent, or ugly, right? We're never unfair. In my view, we are never unfair. My Dynamite reviews behind the paywall are tough but fair. When AEW is good, nobody praises them harder than we do. Nobody puts them over harder than we do. Nobody tells you they're good harder or stronger than we do. That goes for both our pay-per-view reviews, this show, my Dynamite reviews. It's just crazy to me because I would not describe Jim Cornette or Busted Open as fair to AEW. But you get the LaGreca heads and the Cornette signs, but a Flagship sign.
There's bully. I see bully race signs all the time, and it's like, man, really?
So that's what doesn't add up to me. You want to say it's a podcast policy. Well, I see other podcasts, and they're all places that are not fair to AEW a lot of the time. So, or doing an anti-AEW grift, or whatever the case may be. You have Bully Ray's tweet about an hour ago as we do this show live on Thursday. Is TNA the new number 2? What do you think, guys? We'll talk about it on Busted Open tomorrow. It's like, we don't do that kind of content. We we don't slander AEW unfairly, you know. And they have a bad show, we tell you have a bad show, and they have a good show. We've been accused of being AEW defenders at times. So, you know, I don't understand it. But it's just so bizarre to me. I don't know. I mean, I guess were you saving that Bully Ray tweet for later? Did I blow up your spot there?
No, there's you're fine. We can bring that up later again. But yeah, I already kind of
you may as well just get it out. I already said it. So anyway, earlier today he tweets out, with AEW dealing with some struggles, as every company has and does this announcement position TNA to take over the number 2 spot at Busted Open Radio? You know, and then he said they would talk about it tomorrow on the show. The announcement, of course, the TNA NXT Alliance, which we will talk about later.
Sir, WWE Alliance. It'll be NXT.
Right. Okay. Yes. With the NXT brand.
Right.
Yes.
WWE and TNA have agreed to a partnership that will see TNA wrestlers regularly appear on NXT programming and vice versa. So it's WWE and TNA deciding that TNA wrestlers will appear on NXT and NXT wrestlers will appear on TNA.
And we'll talk about it later. We'll break it down.
Yeah.
But I mentioned the Bully Ray tweet, and I just making sure people know what the hell I'm talking about. I mean, preposterous tweet, and
it's absurd.
It just shows that, like, if he really thinks that's a legitimate question, we already knew he was a buffoon, but he clearly has no idea what he's talking about. And then you see, you know, their listeners and their audience who are also a bunch of buffoons, like, yes, good question, Bully Ray. Let us ponder this. There's nothing to ponder, you know.
It's certainly worth looking at, given the struggles that AEW is having at the box office and TNA.
All right, okay. Well, you know what? Let's look at it.
Oh, we're going to look at it. All right. You want to look at it, Joe? Let's look at it.
AEW has a $185 million per year television deal.
Okay.
TNA.
Let me write this down. All right, one sec.
All right,
so AEW is 185. Okay.
Right. TNA has a $0 per year
Zero.
U.S. television deal.
Okay.
$185 million
minus 0 is
TNA's is $0.
Okay. All right.
So that's a $185 million edge per year. That
I could do that math. I'm not good at math. I did do that math though. I got that one.
Okay, well, let's look at pay-per-view. AEW's worst performing pay-per-view in their history did about double the amount of buys of TNA's best performing pay-per-view in their history.
Okay.
A pay-per-view that took place about 15 years ago. So, is that another check in the AEW is number 2 box?
So
mythical...
would them having doubled their pay-per-view buys in 2020, you know, like deep into the 2020s when pay-per-view is less important than it ever has been.
Their worst performing pay-per-view.
Doubled TNA's best performing pay-per-view of all time.
Just about doubled TNA's best performing pay-per-view. Now, if you want to just look at recent, let's be fair. If you just want to look at recent pay-per-view performance, AEW pay-per-views do anywhere between 100 and 200,000 buys, right? 120,000 buys low end, 160,000 buys high end, right? Recent pay-per-views. I think the last time we saw TNA pay-per-view numbers, they were doing about 10,000 buys per pay-per-view. So
that seems less. Seems like that seems lower.
Seems like a lot less.
Seems lower / less. Yeah.
How about when you consider that the second Wembley show alone, not the first Wembley show, because that would be even more ridiculous. But the second Wembley show alone drew more paying fans than TNA has in most of the singular years of the history of the company. That's fact. Now, I'm not going to use the first Wembley show because then I really genuinely don't think there's been a single year in TNA history that drew as many paying fans as the first Wembley show. There might be a year or two in TNA history where they outdrew the second Wembley show. There might be. I'm not even positive about that. 54,000, right? Second show.
Yeah.
Has TNA ever drawn 54,000 paying fans in a year?
No. Oh, God, no. Oh, a year?
In a year.
A year.
I don't think they have.
Probably not. Probably
they definitely
not. No.
haven't drawn 83,000.
No, that one's out. That one's out for sure. Yeah, you'd have to look. You'd have to look at one of the years when they were completely on the road the entire year, like when they were doing tapings on the road and house shows on the road. Like one of those years, maybe any year where they were in the Impact Zone No, throw those years out because most of those weeks they were getting 500 people or however many you could put in the impact zone or whatever. So that's
the
out.
The fact that we're even like chewing on this says it all, doesn't it?
Right,
I mean,
it does say it all. Yeah, at most we're looking at like sometime in like 2010 or 2011, maybe if we squint really hard and look at it, maybe 54,000 one of those years. Maybe
possibly.
Right. Enough where like we would have to do the math to really like the idea that I can't just say no, Joe. Obviously, when they did, in 2010, they did for sure. Right. Come on, what are you thinking about, Joe? Like, because they did 20,000 in that show alone or whatever. The fact that I have to go, maybe if I looked at Cage Match, maybe I could do it.
Their
yeah,
biggest attendance is like 5,000.
Right.
So it's highly doubtful they've ever done 54,000 paying fans in a year. Yeah. The TV, all right, look, TV, all right, is where they're going to get them, right?
Yeah,
So that AEW television audience, we all know it's a dwindling.
Yeah, down to it's less than a million. No milli, what? No milli is what I say.
Well, yeah, it's true. There's no milli, but it appears Dynamite is still doing 7 to 8 times the number of viewers that Impact is doing. So, unfortunately, can't get them there either. So I don't know what the fuck Bully Ray is talking about, but here's the thing. Bully Ray doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about either. Their dense audience has no idea what they're talking about. And here's the other thing. What is this mythical number 2 thing anyway? Are we still stuck in the Monday Night Wars?
Mm-hmm. Of course we are.
We're still on it. Like, what happens? Let's say TNA scores themselves a $186 million television deal, right? Let's just say that happens. Let's say TNA pay-per-views suddenly start drawing 300,000 buyers. Let's say TNA starts drawing massive crowds all over the country and they fill Wembley Stadium themselves and put 100,000 people in it. And let's say that TNA Impact on Access all of a sudden starts hitting the milli, right? And we go, you know what? They're number 2. What happens then? Does AEW hand over a trophy or a plaque?
Yeah,
how does this work?
A key to the city. You hand over like a key to the city. I don't know what city it is. I guess it'd be Chicago, the second city. You get handed over a key to Chicago, the second city, and you can, metaphorically open up any door you possibly want.
What does it mean?
It's one of those PWI plaques, the Pro Wrestling Illustrated plaques that are all the rage today on Twitter. As Kalani Jordan holds up her NXT Women's Superstar of the Year, whatever the fuck award she won. You get a PWI plaque. Or remember when what TNA website gave AJ Styles that one plaque? Was it the Mecca? Do you remember that great photo of AJ Styles having to hold up the TNA plaque?
I don't know.
Oh, I forget what it was. I'll find it.
Is AEW closer to WWE than TNA is to AEW?
Yes, unquestionably.
Probably, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I mean, I want to stress this again. TNA's American television contract pays them $0. We have an equivalent television contract in America that TNA does. $0. I mean, now look, this is this awful position that people like Bully Ray always put TNA in to like these awful comparisons that who was the dork, like Justin LaBar or something like that. Him and Raj Giri were doing it. When Dolph Ziggler went to TNA and they could be number 2. Yeah. You better watch out. They're nipping at the heels. They could be number 2. Voice getting high.
They got Nick Nemeth. I don't know.
Nick Nemeth. I'm gonna check the show out. I'm gonna check it out. Never checked it out. And then it's like it forces people like us to do a reality check, right? It's like I have nothing against TNA. But why do we always have to do this comparison? It's preposterous. Look, I don't know whether AEW is closer to WWE than TNA is to AEW. That might even be a reasonable debate. Here's what I do know. TNA is way closer to MLW and the NWA than they are to AEW.
Of course, yeah.
Way closer. Way closer. Those are so, but it's like these dumb comparisons that have no basis in any kind of reality just force people to shit on TNA. They catch like this, they're catching strays when they're just kind of minding their own business. But we know why Bully Ray does it, because he works with Tommy Dreamer, and Tommy Dreamer works for TNA. And, they're always hyping up TNA because Tommy Dreamer fucking works there. And they're pro wrestlers. And that's what they do. They promote shit. So, anyway, that all ties into, I'm sure you'll see Dave LaGreca heads at the next Dynamite.
Of course. And we will talk more about this partnership later in the show, for the record. So that's not our only segment on it. We'll do bigger
a flagship sign. Oh my God, you can't have that flagship.
No.
Oh my gosh, no. Can't have that. Can't have that. Cornette signs, absolutely. Dave LaGreca heads, no problem. The flagship signs, though. So weird.
Well, it's a very weird
Busted
company.
Does Busted Open get on the media calls? I never heard him on the media calls.
I never heard him either, but I don't know. That's a great question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think they're doing their show. They're usually doing their show at that time, right? When does their show go live?
Yeah, it's in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think they're going live most of the times when it's going on. So,
yeah,
I'm sure they'd ask great questions anyway. But we'll get to the TNA WWE thing a little bit more. We'll also get to more weirdness in AEW because this company continues to get weirder and weirder by the day. And this is one of the weirdest stories they've ever had, this Grand Slam Australia airtime, which we do have an update on, by the way, from what I wrote earlier today on flagshippatreon.com, from what you talked about on the Thursday Dynamite review today, also on flagshippatreon.com. We have an update, something that's just come up recently about that. So we will get to that here in a little bit. Quickly check in on AEW's upcoming schedule as well, because they've announced a few things coming for shows in the next couple of weeks, leading us up to that Grand Slam Australia show. As I said, a little bit more about the TNA WWE formal agreement, and a lot of people missing the forest from the trees on it, so we'll talk about that. New Japan Battle in the Valley, will review that show from San Jose last weekend. MLW Kings of Colosseum, yes, the latest MLW free YouTube special, Kings of Colosseum. We will review and recap that. We're going to preview the People versus GCW. GCW gives it another go in Hammerstein this Sunday. We'll preview that show, and then check in on the FSM 50, which got released earlier today, the 2024 FSM 50. I was on the panel. You are a senior executive advisor on the FSM 50, so we'll discuss the list and a little
very important role, by the way.
Oh, indeed.
Senior executive advisor.
Yeah, does that come with what kind of the key to the bathroom and a good parking spot? Like that's good for you to get that I'm still a panelist. I am on the panel. Yeah. I'll do all this damn work on this FSM 50 and formatting it and stuff, and then I look and you just get promoted to senior executive advisor, and I'm sitting here, I'm a panelist. Lowly panelist. Alan Farrell's a coordinator, you're a senior executive advisor, and I'm a panelist. Tell you something,
buddy, do we really want to compare here? I had to edit these 50 entries that weren't exactly Hemingway level prose. Okay, so I think I put plenty of work in with the old FSM 50. If we're comparing the workloads here, that was no picnic. Let me tell you, that can wear a man down 3 straight nights of that. Cold sweat coming down my forehead and everything else. But you formatted it nicely.
Looks good. VoiceOfWrestling.com, by the way, if you want to go check out that out. But we'll do a bigger segment about that later in the show. We do have to start off, though, with a number of obituaries and bios here. So last week on the show, as we were doing the show, I think somewhere in the second hour, we got word that wrestler Black Bart had passed away. We did a very brief, 5-minute kind of recap of his career. We wanted to give him a little bit more of his due, so we're going to do that here in a moment with Black Bart. And then there's also Bob Uecker in the sports world passed away earlier today. So of course, going to have to talk about some Bob Uecker, one of the great baseball commentators, one of the great sports commentators of all time, and a guy who was a prominent figure in Hollywood as well, not in addition to just being a sports commentator. You've ever seen the movie Major League, he's one of the key characters in Major League as the announcer for the Cleveland Indians. But there's also an ECW.
WWE Hall of Fame.
A WWE Hall of Famer. I always forget about that. Yeah, WrestleMania. Played prominently in WrestleMania.
He lopped off the connection to the show.
Right. I always forget that he had that WWE connection. I don't know why. I'm always I always think about all this other stuff that he does, but I forget. Yes, a WWE Hall of Famer, Bob Uecker. So ties in perfectly to the wrestling aspect of this. And then one that I wanted you to start off with here very briefly, a death that Jovember to remember, people, might be more aware of than your normal wrestling fans. But tell us a little bit about Hunter Q. Robbins.
Jovember to remember people. Like, these are like miscreants who are just
they're kind of weird
the,
people. Nah, they're weird people, man.
These are the Jovember to remember people.
They're an odd breed. The Jovember to remember people, they're an odd breed. They get very mad that you don't have new shows. Yes. They love them. They love Jovember to remember, but then anytime there's not a Jovember to remember episode, they're very mad. You know what I mean? They gotta respect the art. They gotta respect the art and the craft that goes into creating such an incredible series. Yeah, Hunter Q. Robbins III passed away. I guess it was the Blue Meanie who broke the news on Twitter and Facebook a few days ago. Real name Robin Hunt. I guess that's where they came up with Hunter Q. Robbins III. He was all over the early ECW Eastern Championship Wrestling shows, 1992, 1993. Manager of the tag team that still to this day has the most total days as ECW tag team champions, the Super Destroyers, the Super D 1 and 2, and he was the manager of that team, and he was a big part of the angle where the Super Destroyers split. And the Super Destroyers, of course, were AJ Petruzzi and Doug Stahl. And he also managed the Suicide Blondes, which was Johnny Hotbody, Richard Michaels, Sir Richard Michaels, Sir Johnny Hotbody, and Chris Candido, when they were a three-man team, sort of doing the Freebirds rules thing. And then Chris Candido, who was a super hot indie name at the time, one of the fastest rising young wrestlers in the United States. He went down to Smoky Mountain Wrestling to work for Jim Cornette full time, and he left the team. And that left Johnny Hotbody and Sir Richard Michaels behind, but he managed that tag team as well. They feuded with the Super Destroyers over the tag team titles. And then Hunter Q. Robbins III also, in kayfabe, was the person who brought Sabu to ECW. And that is an angle, and that is stuff that we're just about to get to in the Jovember series, as we just passed Ultra Clash 93, and Eddie Gilbert quit/fired from the company. Paul Heyman's taken over, and Sabu's about to show up, and it's actually the on-screen person who brings Sabu to ECW is Hunter Q. Robbins III. So he did your typical heel manager of the era sort of routine, sleazy guy who would stab anybody in the back, always cutting shady deals, out for himself. Everybody knows the archetype there. And he's all over those early shows. And honestly, he did a really good job, especially when compared against the standard of some of the other local guys that were on the show at that time. He was part of the Philadelphia indie scene before the formation of ECW. He didn't last very long after, post Gilbert and into the Heyman era. He hung around for a while, and then that was really it for him in pro wrestling. I know that on occasion he would manage the Super Destroyers, into the early 2000s when they would do low-level indie shows and stuff. But outside of that, he largely got out of pro wrestling. And, if you look up his Facebook page or his IMDb page, because he has a bunch of credits, producer credits and director credits. Yeah, I was looking at that. Robin Hunt on IMDb. There's a lot of stuff there.
He is a filmmaker. He made a lot of short films, and if you check his Facebook page, there's a lot of pictures with what appear to be maybe a granddaughter. It looks like to me, and it looks like he ended up having a very normal and purpose to life after pro wrestling, which you never know with people that are in pro wrestling. He looks like someone who got away from the business and just had a happy life and a good life. And there's other early ECW people like Stevie Wonderful, Stephen C. Truitt, who kind of follow the same path. They didn't do much in wrestling after they left the early days of ECW, but then Truitt, he opened up, a Mexican restaurant that I think is still open in Pennsylvania that survived the pandemic, and he's doing real well for himself after being. During the ECW days, he was a single father of, I think, 3 kids, fresh out of the military. And He raised those kids on his own and left pro wrestling and made a nice life for himself. And it seems to be a similar path for Robin Hunt, Hunter Q. Robbins III, who left wrestling, never looked back, and seemed to make a very nice life for himself. I think he was, people seem to think he was 57 years old, which is obviously way too young to pass away. I haven't been able to find any details on a cause of death or anything like that. I've been searching for obituaries every day and can't find one, because sometimes it takes a couple days for those things to pop up on the internet once they get published in a newspaper or on legacy.com or whatever. But I've been unable to find anything in terms of an obituary or funeral information or cause of death or anything like that. So I don't know if he was ill. I have no idea. There was no indication of that based on what limited social media he had out there. But yeah, Hunter Q. Robbins III, who's been he's all over these Jovember to Remembers as an integral part, as really he's the top heel manager in those early days until Paulie Dangerously shows up. And Paulie shows up, but he doesn't really lose his spot. Like, he's still on all of the shows and mostly with the tag team scene. And and he even lasts a little bit into the Paul Heyman booked era. So Hunter Q. Robbins III passes away at the age of 57.
Let's do Black Bart as well, and then we'll finish with Bob Uecker. So Black Bart is, again, as I said, we talked about him on the show briefly last week because we found out during the show that he had passed away. So no, he had a lot of health issues. I believe he had cancer, colon cancer, stage 4 colon cancer, and basically, he was doing chemotherapy, but decided that he was just gonna, cease the chemotherapy and just pass away, and that's what happened on January 9th. 2025, age 76, for real name Rick Harris, Black Bart, also known as Big Train Bart, Black Bart, Rick Harris, Ricky Harris, Man Mountain Harris, bunch of different names in the wrestling world for Black Bart.
Harris.
Yeah, Hangman Harris, of course. So yeah, he was everywhere. He's one of those classic territory era guys that was just everywhere. I think, I was able to kind of find out he started in 1975, and basically from 1975 until, deep into the 90s, wrestled everywhere, or early 1991 ish, wrestled just about everywhere. Mid Atlantic, Georgia, Mid South, Mid Atlantic, Southeast, championship wrestling with Florida, World Class, UWF, and then of course the PWF in Florida, USWA, and then eventually, finally, after all that, makes it for a pretty brief run in WWF as a jobber as Black Bart, and then of course a little run as Black Bart in WCW too, but not too much else after that. A couple other things. He actually appeared in a World War III not that long ago when I was doing the World War III cap on flagshippatreon.com in 1995. There's like Big Train Bart. And I'm like, who the fuck is Big Train Bart or whatever? I was like, what the fuck is this? And I had to look, and it was Black Bart. And I was like, oh my God, I can't, where did they find Black Bart out of nowhere? And he was still working random indies here and there when they brought him back for World War III in 1995. But yeah, he was in there for a little bit. He appeared on a couple episodes of Saturday Night, and then that was it for him in WCW. But just a long, lengthy career for Black Bart, and a lot of points where people might have seen him or checked him out, because he was, like I said, everywhere. And you may have known him from WCW, you may have known him from WWF, you may have known him from World Class, you may have known him from Mid-South, but the guy was everywhere. There's no chance if you were watching territory wrestling in the 80s, you didn't somehow land on Black Bart at some point.
I think with Black Bart, he's probably best known for three different things. Number one, the various Mid-Atlantic runs, most notably the tag team with Ron Bass, who was Cowboy Ron Bass at that time, managed by J.J. Dillon. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was probably the peak of Black Bart's run, probably the strongest push he ever got in a major territory or major promotion. And then, later on they did the split and they did the feud, and they had the match at Starrcade 85, I want to say, the Black Bart Ron Bass.
Is that the one that's a
match,
is that the bloodbath one where it's just they're fucking bleeding buckets everywhere? Is that the one I'm thinking of?
It's some kind of Texas bull rope or some kind of gimmick
85.
Match.
That is 85. So yeah, it's Ron Bass
85.
defeats Black Bart in a Texas bull rope match, and then J.J. Dillon defeats Ron Bass in a Texas bull rope match. They go back to back.
And that was it. And that's it for, like, J.J. Dillon managed them as a tag team when they came in the Crockett. They were a tag team in Florida and a tag team in Crockett, and won tag team titles in both places. But Dillon, after that team and feud ran its course, that's when J.J. Dillon got hooked up with Tully Blanchard. And then obviously the Horsemen formed not long after, and the rest is history. But J.J. Dillon was managing Black Bart and Cowboy Ron Bass before that. That's number one. Most people of a certain age would recognize him best from that period of Crockett. And he bounced in and out of Crockett basically his entire career. Dusty Rhodes loved him, and Dusty Rhodes would always bring him back. And he even worked for Dusty in '89, like you said, in the PWF when Dusty tried to go national with Florida. He brought Black Bart in. He always used him. So the other would be the WWF run that you noted, where he came in 1990 as a job guy, and we'll get deeper into that as we walk through his career. Because he was on TV practically every week. We talked about that a little bit last week. He was on those syndicated shows doing jobs just about every week, and he was a full-time guy, even though he was a job guy. So he went on the road too. So he worked all the house shows, and he did jobs on TV. Very similar to Jim Brunzell in that era, once Brian Blair left. Very similar to like Pistol Pez Watley. Guys that were respected jobbers on television that also worked the house shows and were full-time. That was what he was for those 13 months in 1990 and 1991 with the WWF run, where he had more television exposure and also made more money than he ever did in his career. And then the third thing I think he would be best known for was his very brief run as a world champion in World Class in 1986. Where Chris Adams, I think it was when Chris Adams beat up the airline pilot or something, or got into a fight on the airplane and got thrown out of the country.
He did a lot. He did a lot in that era. That sounds right. I don't know if it was that specific thing that he did, but Chris Adams was known to do things at that time for sure. You're probably right. That sounds about right.
It was one of Chris Adams' incidents where Fritz had to stop using them for a while, and they did the fictional title change in Los Angeles, California, a usual stop on the World Class circuit. And where allegedly Black Bart won the title, and then he lost it a couple weeks later.
You are correct, by the way. I hate to interrupt. According to testimony and accounts in the Dallas Morning News, Adams, who was under the influence, believe it or not, verbally assaulted a stewardess when he became belligerent when it was announced that liquor sales would no longer be available on the flight. The flight, by the way, was between San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Dallas. That's not that long of a flight, Chris. What? Yeah. Chris Adams, everybody. Yeah. June 1986 flight between San Juan, Puerto Rico, and Dallas. He verbally assaulted. So he left quite shortly thereafter, and they decided to go with Black Bart.
Yeah, they put it on Black Bart because they needed somebody as a transitional guy so they could do a big title change in the in the Cotton Bowl. And he lost the title to Kevin Von Erich. But those would be the three, I think, most prominent runs of Black Bart's career. In the early 80s, he bounced around as Ricky Harris, Hangman Harris. He was a job guy. If you go watch Mid-Atlantic stuff, you might run into him, because what's the date range for your
83? I'm looking at 1983 for Tour of the Territories.
And Mid-Atlantic's part of it, right?
Mid-Atlantic is part of it, yes.
Is Southeastern part of it?
Southeastern is absolutely part of it, yes.
Is Florida part of it?
Florida's not. Yeah, there was enough. There was enough TV in Florida.
You might run into Ricky Harris at some point during your project, because he did work Southeastern. That was what Alabama was calling themselves then. Would later be Continental in the later part of the decade. And that was one of his many tours in Mid-Atlantic. But at that time, he was a TV jobber. He wasn't any kind of a push commodity or anything like that. He was a full-time guy, but he was doing jobs. So around that era, from, in the early 80s, 81, 82, 83, bounced around, like you said, Georgia, Florida, Southeastern, all the different territories as Ricky Harris. And then it was really, I think it was in Mid-South where he picked up the name Black Bart, and that would have been maybe 84-ish. It would have been before the Florida Mid-Atlantic runs where he was teaming with Ron Bass. So it may have been 83. I'm not quite sure, but somewhere in that neighborhood. But once he formed a team with Bass in Florida, and they feuded with the Wyndhams, Blackjack Mulligan, Barry Windham, a little bit with Kendall Windham through the next few years when they would be in that territory. Mostly Ron Bass, though, because Ron Bass beat Barry Windham in a loser league town match, and then that's why Barry Windham was doing the yellow dog gimmick.
Right.
Yeah, right. And Black Bart was sort of an ancillary part of that. But that was mainly Ron Bass's feud. But they won whatever version of the Florida tag team titles existed when in 84 or whatever as a tag team. And then they went to Crockett, managed by J.J. Dillon. And he worked Black Bart worked Starrcade 84 against, was it Manny Fernandez?
Let me double check that for you. I don't remember that Starrcade off the top of my head.
So
Manny Fernandez. Yeah.
Right.
Mid-Atlantic Brass Knuckles title match. Black Bart defending against Manny Fernandez.
Well, Black Bart, no matter where he went, they would put him in they put the Brass Knucks title on him. It seemed like everywhere he went, he held the Brass Knucks title or fought for the Brass Knucks title in Florida, in Mid-Atlantic, later on at the end of his career for Global. So he was always in the mix at the time. Now, if people don't know what
I was
going to
say, do you want to explain what the Brass Knuckles Championship is to people that might not know?
In modern wrestling, you'd call it a hardcore title. Is it the best way to describe it? It wasn't both guys putting on a pair of brass knucks, and it varied in the different territory, but it's essentially like your anything goes, no rules. What you would call maybe the closest equivalent would be like a hardcore title or something like that today. And that was his style. He was a brawler. He was a 300+ pound guy, a legitimate good old boy Texan who, had that cowboy. Ron Bass had the whip. Black Bart had the cattle prod, not the cattle prod, the cattle branding gimmick with the BB on it, where he would brand his opponents. So they both had gimmicks. One had the whip and one had the cattle brander. And they were big, nasty cowboys. Ron Bass was a little bigger. He had like the handlebar mustache. They both wore the cowboy hats. Black Bart a lot of the times wore the big duster, and that was a popular style gimmick in those days, and Dusty loved using guys like that. And after they had their feud and split in 1985, Bass went back to Florida for a while in 86, and Bart stayed behind in Crockett and had a bunch of feuds over the national title. And I think he had some feuds over the Mid-Atlantic title around that period too. Those were like secondary titles because by that point, Ric Flair and the NWA World title was basically housed at Mid-Atlantic. So that was their main title. So they had secondary titles like the Mid-Atlantic title and the national title, and Black Bart would be in the mix for those types of belts. I think he held the national title. In fact, he beat Ron Garvin for it, and I think he lost it to Terry Taylor, if you want to fact check that as well. But in 86, that's when he went to Dallas for what we talked about earlier when Chris Adams got fired. Now, he had already been there for a few weeks, and then Adams gets fired. So he sort of accidentally gets his first world title, quote unquote world title, because World Class was in the shitter at that point. It was on its way down. They were probably 3 or 4 years post peak. And then,
that was one of those shows that you were talking about last week where you talked about, these World Class shows where, the announcers would be like, late arriving crowd, but they'll be here any minute now. Because as that match, because I watched that match earlier today, the Kevin Von Erich versus Black Bart, when Kevin Von Erich wins his title back from Black Bart at the Cotton Bowl. And it's like a lot of open seats, a lot of good seats available at the Cotton Bowl at that time, because we're deep into the recession of the oil business. World Class having lost, a multitude of reasons why World Class was down for that, at that point, with deaths in the family and tragedies and bad booking and just a multitude of reasons why World Class. But yeah, at that point, World Class is not the, if you're thinking, oh wow, that's pretty big, he's won the world title, World Class. It's not the World Class in 1983 or 84 or 82, really. It's definitely on some pretty hard times.
And it was right after they kind of created a world title, because Rick Rude had merged the Texas title and whatever their version of the world title a few months earlier, and it became like the unified world title or whatever. And that's the same unified title that would find its way into the USWA a few years later. This is the same title lineage. But just rewinding after the feud with Ron Bass and the team splits, it's interesting because in late 85, Black Bart forms a tag team with Thunderfoot. And this was after the Ron Bass feud. And it's a heel tag team, and he teamed with him until about the summer of 86. Now, Ron Bass sticks around Crockett until about March of 86, and then he goes back to Florida. Okay, so they do their deal, and Bass leaves the territory, but Black Bart stays behind, and he teams with Thunderfoot. And I watched a couple of these Black Bart Thunderfoot matches. I watched the match against the Rock and Roll Express. It was a 3-minute and 15-second match. It's on YouTube. And I don't think you could have a better 3-minute and 15-second match tag team match than this. I mean, somehow, if you ever want to question why the Rock and Roll Express are Hall of Famers, I don't know why you would want to do that.
Yeah, first off, what the fuck's wrong with you?
Hey, it took them years and years to get in.
That's true.
So this is a 3-minute match, and they managed to do Shine Heat come back and not make any of it feel rushed. They attack the heels at the bell, and then the heels take control. Ricky Morton does his whole Heat segment, makes the hot tag to Robert Gibson. You all know the formula. They win with the double drop kick. It's a 3-minute match where they squeeze like a 13-minute match into it, and none of it feels rushed or contrived. It's amazing. It is such a good 3-minute match. And let me tell you something. Black Bart and Thunderfoot, that Thunderfoot was Len Denton. Okay? That was before the Thunderfoots tag team. Not the Thunderfeet, Rich. You would think they'd be the Thunderfeet. But no, they were the Thunderfoots.
The Thunderfoots, yeah.
Yes. So the original Thunderfoot, though, was Len Denton. And I got together with Zellner and we worked all this out. He was the original Thunderfoot gimmick. And he wears a full body suit and a mask. And his gimmick was he would load up that boot right behind the referee. That's why he was Thunderfoot. So he would do the loaded boot gimmick. And they paired him up and Len Denton was a good worker, and he was a big guy, 6'5".
Mm-hmm. Well, I've already encountered Len Denton. If people are checking out the Tour of the Territories, we've gotten some Len Denton already, as he is a good worker. A certain man. Yeah, he is. He's Dirty White Boy number 2, who we're going to interact with in Tour of the Territories here pretty shortly. So,
yeah. So anyway, he was. He was new to the territory, and obviously Black Bart had been in and out of the territory forever. And they paired them up for a few months there. They had that match against the Rock and Roll Express, and then I saw them wrestle Ron Garvin and Manny Fernandez in a 13-minute match that went through a commercial break. Rich, I swear to you, the work in that match is better than anything you'll see on Raw or Dynamite this week. I don't want to be that guy, but it's so fucking good. I am not a modern wrestling disrespecter by any means. Everybody knows that. I think there's a lot of things modern wrestlers do a lot better than the older wrestlers. I think they put together more exciting closing stretches. I think in general they have more exciting matches because of that. The athleticism is obviously better. I think the work is cleaner, even though that's not always an advantage, right? And I think you understand what I mean by that. But if you go back and watch it, it's on YouTube. I recommend it to anyone. The little things were just so much better 40 years ago. There's one spot where Bart and Thunderfoot, they have Garvin in the corner, and they make him fight for his life to get out of the corner. Like, he has to physically fight them to fight out of the corner, and it's like they make him earn it because that was the style of work then, because, the idea was to fool people. We weren't winking at the audience, and it's just little things like that. I think Black Bart, now that match you're talking about against Kevin Von Erich, it's a terrible match.
Oh, it's so
the match is
yeah,
awful.
It's brutal.
But there's a period between about 84 and 86 where Black Bart is legitimately a very good worker in the way he bumps. I mean, in this match, he's throwing on holds. He's taking big bumps, and this is a 340-pound guy. Len Denton's doing his thing. They're doing quick tags. They got nice double team moves. I was so impressed with this Black Bart Thunderfoot team that I had never watched before. Just watching the small handful of matches that they had from late 85 into early 86. The only thing about that match is at the end of the match, Thunderfoot, he loads up the boot, right? While the ref is distracted. And he kicks Manny Fernandez, and Manny Fernandez just no-sells it. Like, he totally, and that's the guy's whole gimmick. But isn't that so Manny Fernandez to do that?
Sounds like Manny Fernandez. Yep.
Like that's the guy's, you can't no-sell the guy's gimmick, so he no-sells it. And then, the finish is Garvin's got a hold of the Thunderfoot, and no, Fernandez doesn't. Garvin goes up to the top rope and does a top rope sunset flip to pin the guy. So it was a very creative finish for 1985 or 1986, whenever it was anyway. But yeah, so this is where things get interesting for Bart, because in late 86, and this is the way he tells the story anyway, which, by the way, the Thunderfoot tag team later on is Joel Deaton and Gene Lejean, right? Or Gene League. I've never heard anyone say it, but I've seen the guy wrestle a million times. And then Len Denton leaves the team, and holy shit, who replaced? It was David Isley. David Isley replaces Len Denton in the so when you see the Thunderfoot's tag team, it's always Gene Lejean, but in the early days it's with Len Denton, and then later on it's with David Isley. But anyway, in late 86, remember, Ron Bass is in Florida now, and Black Bart is still in Crockett, but it's post-push, and he's really not going anywhere. He's doing jobs with Thunderfoot. Now, the way Black Bart tells the story is they both get invited to a WWF tryout, a 3-day tryout. He doesn't go because he's afraid if Crockett finds out he goes to he's going to get fired, right? So the way he figured it was, if I go to this tryout and they don't hire me, now where am I going to go? Because Crockett's going to fire me.
And you're in an era now where at this point in the territories, there's a lot fewer places to work than there was 3, 4, 5 years ago. Yeah, in 1981 through 1985, you had your pickings of wherever you wanted to go. I could go here, I could go there, I could go there. At this point now, you're getting into 1986. Now it's starting to get pretty lean out there. So you don't want to really burn a bridge with Mid-Atlantic or Crockett at that point, because there's not many other places to go where you're going to make a sizable amount of money.
Yeah, and he's got a good thing going with Crockett. He drifts in and out. Like he goes to other territories, because guys like to keep fresh, like to freshen guys up. Sometimes they tell you, look, go somewhere for 6 months and come back. But he had a real steady gig with Crockett around this time because Dusty loved booking him. And so the way he figured it was too risky. If McMahon doesn't hire me, I'm fucked. So he doesn't go. Ron Bass goes. Ron Bass gets the gig. As we all know, he gets hired. He starts in January of 87. And the way that now look, wrestlers talk shit. It's the old high school football player. If I hadn't blown out my knees, you know what I mean? But his story adds up because he says what was being pitched was to come in as a tag team with Bass based on the work they had done in Crockett on TBS, and I guess to a lesser extent Florida, but I guess the WWF people would have seen them on Crockett, right, on TBS. And they would have been, he says the plan was to program them with Blackjack Mulligan and Brutus Beefcake. So that sounds weird on the surface. But when you think about Ron Bass's run, when he gets there in January of 87, the first thing they do at Ron Bass is they shoot a television angle with Ron Bass and Blackjack Mulligan, who, as I noted, feuded years earlier in Florida. Right? So they knew those guys were familiar with each other. Mulligan, though, gets fired or quits. I forget how he left the company. But he's out of there. But then Beefcake does the babyface turn at WrestleMania in March. And then who does Ron Bass have his most notable feud with in WWF a few months later? Brutus Beefcake.
Right.
When he attacks him with the spurs on the big TV
Of course. The big X on the screen. Can't see it.
That's the one.
Yep.
Where he attacks him, and that's Ron Bass's most notable feud and angle in WWF. It's people still remember it today. You weren't even born yet.
I wasn't even born. I know it exactly. Right.
So he attacks him with the spurs. He bloodies up Beefcake. It's one of Beefcake's first big programs as a babyface. So when you hear Black Bart tell this, and when you watch his old shoots, God, he's just a big old country boy. You get the sense that maybe there's some tall tales and fuzzy memories, but he doesn't really come across as like a massive bullshitter. You know how you can tell the difference sometimes? he's never trying to blow smoke and make his career feel like it's bigger than it was. So when he, I tend to believe him. I tend to believe him that was pitched to him, because those are the exact feuds that Bass ended up doing anyway. Right. So anyway, he bypassed the tryout. Bass went. Bass gets hired. Bass has the 3-year run or whatever. Really, after the Beefcake feud, Bass kind of peters out, and that's when he leaves. So, he had a nice 2.5, 3-year run. Bart, that's when he, around this time, that's when he was in Texas, and that's what we talked about earlier, where they put the world title on him, and then he lost the world title in the Cotton Bowl to Kevin Von Erich with Kerry in the corner. Kerry, who was absolutely wasted. You could tell, like, even outside the ring, you could tell that Kerry is just on another fucking planet.
Kerry's trying to get the crowd to start chanting. He's like, Kevin. Just like he's slurring. He can't even say his brother's name without slurring his words. And this is, I believe this is Kerry not far removed from his motorcycle accident as well. So a man living with an amputated foot, I'm sure he was not. Things were not going well for Kerry at this point, because I think the motorcycle accident was July 86, right? July 86. I want to say so. He was very, very, very.
Well, it would have been Kerry in this spot. They would have put the title on Kerry.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it would not have been Kevin. But yeah, so, we're in the deep into the throngs of Kerry Von Erich's drug addictions and painkiller addictions and just every addiction possible at this point.
So he does the job to Kevin in a short match. Technically, the main event was Bruiser Brody versus Abdullah the Butcher, with Fritz Von Erich as the referee. The show does horrible. They do 5,800 fans. There's nobody there.
It looks awful. Yeah.
This is just the dying days of world class at this point. So that, he didn't leave after that. I mean, he stuck around. He talks about how when he first got to world class, he was immediately programmed with the Von Erich boys, and he said he hated working with them because they were always wasted or high, and Kevin was stiff. And he's hardly the first person to claim Kevin Von Erich was stiff in the ring. That was always Kevin Von Erich's reputation. Kevin Von Erich would just beat the shit out of you because he knew there'd be no punishment, right? And I think because he knew he was smaller than a lot of guys, that might have had something to do with it. But his dad ran the place, and they weren't going to get fired no matter what. So, Bart talks about how he hated working with them because you'd often, it's the same story a lot of people tell. He would talk about how you would have to almost wrestle yourself. You'd have to put yourself in holds and just try to get through the match, especially on like the spot shows and the house shows where, they would just show up completely wasted and it was a total mess. And you get the sense he had heat with Kevin Von Erich. He said on one of his first nights in, so he had the branding iron, right? The branding iron was his gimmick. And I couldn't think of the term branding iron before. What did I call it? A cattle brander?
You call it something weird. And you meant branding iron, but I didn't want to do
cattle branding gimmick.
Yeah, I think a cattle branding gimmick, but
so he's got the branding iron, and the finish was to hit Kevin with the branding iron and pin him, just basic heel finish. So the ref's distracted, and he says he gives him a nice working shot with the branding iron, and Kevin just no-sells it and like poses to the crowd, right? So then he's like, what the fuck, right? So he's like, all right, I'll give him a second one. So he gives him a second, working shot, and Kevin no-sells it again, right? And he's like waving the crowd on. So Bart's like, all right, well, fuck this guy. So he clocks him for real the third time and like knocks him loopy or knocks him silly. And then, he pins him and does the deal, and the referee counts, and he figures he's fired, right? Because they got medical. He's getting medical attention. Like,
he just knocked out the promoter's son. Yeah, he's probably not gonna. Once he gets back through the curtain, it's probably not going to go well for him.
And he picks up the branding iron in this shoot, and he shows it. And he says, "See this dent here? This is from Kevin Von Erich's head. Like I knocked him out with the branding iron." So he lived a half hour from the Sportatorium. So, which is why he, in between Crockett tours, he liked working in Dallas, because it was like, it's the house he died in. Like he lived there till the day he died, but it was only a half hour from the Sportatorium. So he gets home, and he said his phone rings, and it's Fritz. And he does this great imitation of it. He's like, "What the hell are you doing, Bart, hitting my boy with the branding iron? What are you doing?" And he's like, "Well, he explained it to him." and he thought he was going to get canned, but he didn't because Fritz liked him and he kept him around. It was funny though, because when he worked in World Class, they didn't bill him from Texas. They billed him from the Badlands of the Dakotas because I think they were afraid if they billed him from Texas, he wouldn't get over as a heel. Right, because everyone's so proud of being from fucking Texas.
Yeah, and that was his gimmick everywhere else. Like when he's in Mid-Atlantic or whatever, they're like, "Yeah, this guy's Texas through and through," and he's a very Texas guy. So yeah, if you come to World Class and you say, "Hey, here's this guy from," they might cheer him. He's from Texas, so yeah, it made sense to. He's a cowboy, but he ain't one of our cowboys. He's one of them Dakota cowboys. So that worked out pretty well. Yeah, that was probably the move that if you push him as being from Dallas, Texas, the crowd might actually like him. So that's smart.
Yeah. So, that 86 run ends, and then in 87, 88, he's just bouncing around. Watts would bring him in again. And actually, when Watts brought him in 87, that was shortly before he sold to he sold to Crockett.
Yeah, right.
And it's funny because he was one of the few, and I talk about this in November on the Eddie Gilbert doc, because Eddie Gilbert finally got the book, right, in Mid-South, and then Watts sells, and Gilbert doesn't really have any control anymore because Dusty is faxing over all the booking plans to Gilbert. So he's really just executing Dusty's marching orders on all the Mid-South shows because they ran them as two separate promotions.
Right. They said, "Oh, we'll stay out of your way. Dusty's just got some thoughts." And then eventually Dusty just faxed over the shows and said, "Just do this. Here's the
Dusty's
thoughts I have.
Thoughts
do
were,
this."
here's every finish and here's everything we're doing.
Right. But you do the show. It's your show. It's your thing.
It's your show though, Eddie.
You do it, but this is exactly what I want to happen with every match and every finish. But other than that, it's all yours, man.
Other
Take
than that, Eddie, you're in control, pal.
Right.
So it's funny because if you go back and watch those dying day UWF TVs, in between all the Crockett shit that they were shoehorning on it to get the Crockett guys over, you can see that Gilbert is like, fuck this. I know the end is near. I'm just pushing myself, and I'm pushing Sting. Because all of the UWF segments that were taped at the UWF shows that didn't have anything to do with the Crockett stuff, it was always Gilbert's feud with Terry Taylor.
Yep.
Was like the hardest push thing on the show, and Sting, because Gilbert
Hot Stuff International or whatever, taking part of it. Yeah, so much of that.
Loved Sting, and he believed in Sting so much and wanted to get Sting over. He was the first true believer in Sting, and he pushed him so hard and told anyone who would listen, this guy's going to be the biggest thing in the business. And a lot of those late stage UWF shows are just Eddie Gilbert versus Terry Taylor and whatever it takes to get Sting over.
Right.
And then all the Crockett shit. Then it like the Western States Heritage title and all this other bullshit that Dusty was forcing onto the show, which, by the way, the Western States Heritage tournament, I believe Barry Windham, who he beat in the final, Black Bart, because Dusty loved Bart. And this is what I was getting at. He was right place, right time in the UWF because he was one of the few UWF guys that got pushed.
Right, he got pushed
Dusty
once.
Liked him.
Yeah, because if people don't, this is, and we're going to speak about wrestling partnerships and promotions, all that sort of stuff. UWF, which was Mid-South Wrestling, they entered into a relationship / acquired / partnership, whatever you want to call it, with Jim Crockett Promotions, and the idea was, oh, here we go. Like every idea always is when any promotion thing begins, and there's going to be all these great dream matches, and we're going to have the minds of this guy, and this guy's going to face this guy, and very quickly thereafter it was, okay, well, NWA has the high ground here, Jim Crockett Promotions has the high ground here, so basically they just controlled the whole thing, and eventually in due time it was just like you said, Dusty Rhodes just kind of controlled the whole thing, and Jim Crockett just controlled the whole thing, and UWF was like, essentially, hey, we're just going to use a couple of your guys that we like, but otherwise we have really no need for you guys because we have the high ground, and we basically bought you guys out because you guys were failing and we were succeeding. But like you said, Black Bart was one of those guys that along with Sting and a few other dudes, Rick Steiner, the famous ones that people bring up all the time, were guys that Jim Crockett Promotions liked and said, oh yeah, okay, we'll predominantly feature a few of these guys. So Black Bart, perfect timing for him, getting his Dusty getting his eyes on him again after being with Mid-Atlantic / Jim Crockett for so many years. He's back here in the UWF now at the perfect time, now that Dusty has more control over the show and Jim Crockett Promotions has control of the show.
Yeah, because he's one of the guys they brought back. You had Steve Williams, Rick Steiner, Sting, Eddie Gilbert, those guys who they integrated in. Shane Douglas maybe in that group as a young guy. And then, Black Bart got his spot back in Mid-Atlantic once they shut down the UWF, once they just completely gave up on it, brought all those guys in and beat them. Black Bart had a gig waiting for him again. But then Dusty gets fired and all that. So he goes back to Dallas in late 88. And because Fritz liked him too. He's a guy that promoters really liked because he didn't have any kind of big ego. He didn't care whether you pushed him or not. He's just a classic territory style wrestler. Pay me. I want to make money. I'm going to go where I can make money. He was very agreeable and those sorts of things. He was a good promo for his gimmick. And there was that 2 or 3 year period where I thought he was really an excellent worker for his size. By this point, though, he's starting to wear down and he's not much of a worker. So Dusty gets fired, with the blood angle from Crockett, tries to start up Florida again. I guess not start it up, but reinvent it as a national promotion, the PWF. And he brings a lot of his old buddies in, including Bart. So they tried to build it around Fred Ottman, which, was Tugboat / Typhoon later on. It's where he obviously Dustin Rhodes got one of his first pushes there. Black Bart was there. Mike Graham, obviously, because I'm sure he was part owner with
Florida,
Dusty.
yeah.
So you had all those guys, and Bart was part of that for a while. Ron Bass came in there for a while too.
That's fun. There's a lot of that on YouTube as well. If you want to go and check out a little bit of that, PWF.
Nasty Boys, Nasty Boys were down there. It was a massive failure, but it's fun to go back and watch. I think DDP, young DDP, is
very young
DDP.
DDP. Yeah, young DDP is one of the main commentators there, one of the main heels in the company. While he's doing commentary, he's promoting his bar shows as well. Where it's like Gordon Sully. I love these episodes. They're so great. Because Gordon Sully's like, we're here watching wrestling in Florida. Diamond Dallas Page. I hear you have an event you want to promote. DDP's like, yeah, Gordon. Come down to the, whatever his bar is. This Friday, we're going to have ladies and drinks and buckets of beer. It's like legit things. He's like a bar promoter on this show promoting these things. And Gordon Sully never wanted to pass up a drink. He's like, I might have to be there, Diamond. Sounds good to me. That's so good.
Yeah.
It's like ladies and buckets of beer. All right. I'll see you there, Diamond. But yeah, it doesn't work because Dusty gets hired by WWF pretty shortly after.
Exactly. Now they try to keep it going with Mike Graham and some of the other partners.
With no Dusty, it was just a failed.
It wasn't going to work with Dusty.
Right.
I mean, it didn't have any chance even with Dusty. But yeah, so Dusty goes to WWF. I guess Steve Kern would have been with the other guy, right? Mike Graham and Steve Kern would have been Dusty's partner. And they do try to keep it going like deeper into 89. In fact, by the time Bart got there, Dusty might have been gone. I haven't really looked at the timeline real tight, but the connection was obvious. So 89 he spends just bouncing around Memphis, Florida, places like that. And then 1990. So what happens is J.J. Dillon leaves Crockett or WCW, whatever it is at that point in late 89, and goes to work for Vince as a agent and a front office guy. And he brings Bart in 90 with the obvious connection of having managed him and everything else. So it's funny because Black Bart comes in just as Ron Bass is leaving, right? And as the story is told, he comes in on his first night and he's working directly with JJ, and JJ's like, look around the locker room and you tell me who you want to go out there and beat, pick an enhancement guy. Who do you want to work with? And Bart wanted to work with Alan Martin, who he considered the best job guy in the business, who was mostly, do you remember him? He was mostly a Crockett jobber.
Alan Martin. The name rings a bell, but I can't put a face to the name.
Yeah, mostly did jobs in Crockett, and Bart probably faced him 1,000 times. But he wasn't there, so his second pick was Lee Peak, who was another very respected job guy of the era. So they tell him, look, we're not going to tape this. Just go out there and do your thing and beat them, hit your finish. And then, do the big, I'm a Texan stuff and all that. And then we'll talk. So he goes out there, has a little 3-minute match with Lee Peak. And it's an enhancement match. So he's just beating the shit out of the guy. He's not taking any bumps, which is important to the story. So it comes time to do the finish, and Black Bart used to use that second rope leg drop.
Right. The Texas Trash Compactor was the name of the Texas Trash Compactor was the name of that move, which is a great name.
So he hits the finish, but he had never worked in a WWF ring, and he says he wasn't expecting the ring to be as hard as it was. It was a harder ring than he was used to.
That ring, the WWF ring, was well known for in that era, and pretty much until surprisingly weird. I don't know, maybe this is a coincidence or not. When Vince McMahon started doing more in-ring work and had to bump a couple times, all of a sudden he said, "God damn, this ring's hard as hell," and they got a new ring that wasn't hard. But yeah, for decades, the WWF's rings were known for being hard as fuck, just pure concrete.
Yeah. Yeah, and because he didn't bump in the match, because why would you bump for the jobber, especially when you're trying to go out there and impress people, right? Your first night in, he wasn't expecting that, and he just, he says his whole body went numb. He had the wherewithal to make the pin, but then he was selling it worse than the guy who took the move was, because he couldn't stand up.
Right.
So he said he couldn't feel his legs, he couldn't stand up, and he finally gets his legs back underneath him and goes to the back, and JJ gets in his face. And he's like, "What the hell you doing? You're supposed to, where's the celebration? You make me look bad. I get you in, and Vince thinks it sucked, and you're making me look bad. I'm new here too, And he's like, "Dude, I was paralyzed out there. I couldn't feel my legs. Like I just couldn't physically do it." So he thinks that's why. Now they ended up hiring him anyway. But he thinks that's why he ended up being used as a job guy, because he gave Vince a very negative impression right off the bat in his little tryout match, where he didn't do what he was asked because he got fucked up in the match, right? But they did keep him on. He was there for 13 months. He did nothing but television jobs. I don't think he won a match on TV ever. I think every single match that hit tape, he lost. And he was on TV every week. Now, he was on the road full time, and he did win on the road sometimes. If he was in there with another guy that was on his level, he would occasionally beat them. If he was in there with Jim Powers or Brady Boone or, somebody like that, Pez Watley, Jim Brunzell. Well, no, Brunzell would always beat him. In fact, Brunzell beat him on TV.
Yeah, it was like Jim Powers and Paul Diamond and Pez Watley and those kind of guys he would beat, but everybody else he'd lose to.
He would trade wins with guys like that. Like the other guys the other full-time jobbers, basically, that were names in other places. And the other thing he would be is like, if he would be in a tag team match on TV, the jabroni would take the pin, not him. Like he was a slight level above the local jobbers, right? So he'd be the guy that would start the match and, he'd sell a little bit or whatever. Then he would tag out, and then they would, they beat the local job guy. So, and that's the kind of respect he got as someone who worked in all the, because, whoever the agents were for those matches, they weren't going to he would get more respect than the local jobbers is basically what I'm trying to say. But he would never win on TV. And he was there for 13 months. But here's the thing. He didn't care. He said he made more money than he ever made in his life on that 13-month run being full-time with WWF in 1990. And while he would have liked to have been pushed, of course, I saw several different interviews with him where he was just like, it's just, whatever. They didn't push me, but I made all this money, and ultimately I was okay with it. So, he's not bitter. He didn't complain. And now, I don't know how much truth there is to this. This could be, wrestler shit. But he says on the day that Vince gave him his notice, where they did some cuts at TV, they brought everybody to TV and they cut about a dozen guys. He says that Vince told him, if you would have come when I asked you to the first time with Ron Bass, you'd be a millionaire. I was going to push you guys. I was going to put the titles on you. You may have had a job for life, but you didn't come. And you didn't come till 3 years later. And I remembered that. And that's why I never pushed you. He claims that's what Vince told him. Now, on one hand, I can see Vince McMahon telling
yes. That seems like something Vince McMahon would tell somebody. Yes.
Okay. I could totally see Vince saying that. And Vince did push Ron Bass. Now, he didn't push him, like he didn't get a mega push. He was a mid-carder, but he got pushed. Black Bart didn't get pushed at all when he showed up 3 years later. And I could totally see Vince holding on to something like that and punishing him for it. So he thought he was slotted as a jobber because he fucked up his finish in his tryout. But by the end of the run, and the way that he told it basically until his death was that Vince was holding a grudge on him for not coming when Vince asked him to come the first time. So I don't know. Your mileage may vary on whether you, think he's bullshitting or whether you think he's telling the truth on that. It seemed, it makes sense to me. I mean, I could totally see Vince seeing it that way and fucking with a guy in that manner. But anyway, that was it for the WWF run. Went back to Dallas. At this point, it was global. It wasn't Fritz anymore. It was global. Well, actually, first he went to WCW, right? As the Desperados.
Yeah, part of the Desperados in WCW. Really, really cool group. It was Dutch Mantel, Black Bart, and what is it? Deadeye Dick Slater, right? Deadeye Dick Slater.
Randy
Randy Colley. That was Randy Colley, right? Deadeye Dick was Randy Colley. Moondog Rex or whatever.
No, it was Randy Colley. It was Randy Colley as Deadeye Dick.
Yes,
you were right.
That's right. Okay.
It was
No, I think that's it. Yeah, his name was Deadeye Dick, but it was Randy Colley / Moondog Rex or whatever name you know him as.
Right, but Randy Colley, it was Randy Colley / Moondog Rex though, right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Deadeye Dick was. Myself. No. It was. So they were a group of cowboys. Now they weren't exactly the best cowboys.
It was played for comedy.
The Desperados were. They were not. It might sound cool, but they were played as to be idiots, and they were. Their goal was to get to Stan Hansen and get him to come to WCW to help them out or whatever. So there's a bunch of vignettes of them, riding around, going to old Western saloons and riding horses in the Wild West or whatever. And it was just kind of done for whatever. And
the gimmick was they were looking for Stan Hansen.
Right. They were trying to find Stan Hansen somewhere to bring him to WCW. And then he would wrestle a couple times in WCW, mostly, I think Super Brawl 1, I want to say he was there. Ooh. And then Black Bart.
Black Bart. Yeah,
Bart, yeah.
They wrestled as a trio early.
Yeah.
But it didn't last because it was just, first he came in. He just came in 91.
Right, he was just Black Bart. But then he was just Black Bart at first.
Yeah, then they did the Desperados thing, which was played for comedy. It didn't work. And then once they split that up, he was basically in a very similar role that he had in WWF. He's just doing TV jobs for the most part. And then there's like an urban legend that Stan Hansen watched it on TV and saw how hokey it was and didn't want anything to do with it. But the way that Bart tells the story is Stan Hansen, there was never any intent to pay it off. They got his permission to use his name, but it was never, he says it was never going to pay off with them finding him or him joining them. It was just part of the bit that they were these buffoonish cowboys.
Looking for the big cowboy, but the big cowboy was never coming.
Exactly. Like he was their idol. You know what I mean? That was the bit. That was the joke. He says Hansen was in on it and didn't give a fuck. But, who knows where the truth lies there on that one. But that was it. That was a very short run. And then he had the long run with Global.
Mm-hmm.
Because, again, he lived a half hour from the fucking building because they were running the Sportatorium. And WWF wasn't an option. WCW, obviously, he just had a run there. So he was with Global really for that whole era where they were on ESPN, and he got a good push. And that's where, he teamed with people like Rattlesnake Jeff Rates and Bill Irwin and Johnny Mantell, and he broke JBL in. He trained JBL and broke him in, and JBL got that run with him in Global. He was instrumental in the early part of the career of Harlem Heat, which was the Ebony Experience at that point in Global, and he rode with them a lot. In fact, he tells a story of how they would beg him on the drives to call Dusty for them to get them in WCW, and he says they promised to get him a fishing boat if he would hook them up with Dusty. So eventually he relented, hooked them up with Dusty. And he says he's still waiting for his fishing boat. He never got his fishing boat from Booker T. So, bad job out of Harlem Heat there, not giving this man his fishing boat. But so he had the 3-year run with Global on ESPN where the last time he was a pushed guy because they used him well, probably because he was local, reliable, and professional, right? So it's like, and a guy who was an ex-national name in both companies. So he was treated well there. And then the run that I am not familiar with at all that you brought up earlier with the where he went back to WCW was Big Train Bart. So you're gonna have to jump in here.
It was brief. It was brief. I got to see how much it even lasted because I know he was there for the World War III, and I know this because while they were doing they're like, oh, that's Big Train Bart. I'm like, who the fuck is Big Train Bart? So I had to look up a little bit about Black Bart. So it's actually pretty recent that I've looked up his whole career. So it's kind of interesting that he does pass away not long after that. So okay, yeah, he comes in for World War III. God only knows. They probably said, Dusty, we need 60 guys. You know anybody? He said, I got a guy.
Right,
he calls his buddy Black Bart, who shows up, does the World War III pay-per-view, does a Saturday night taping like a couple days later, does a worldwide taping a couple nights later, and then he's out. So he does World War III. He loses to Disco Inferno on Saturday night, and then he loses to Chris Benoit on Worldwide. Now that Chris Benoit match I know is available on YouTube if people want to watch that, and that's it. So that's the whole Big Train Bart run for Black Bart in WCW is 3 shots in November and briefly in December of 1995, and that's it. Then he's out, and he's gone on his way again.
Yeah, and that's it for him as a major league wrestler. I mean, he does some indie shots in Texas, probably close to home, and then that's pretty much it. And just fades away, and then he just went back to his little piece of property there in North Texas, and he lived there the rest of his life. He had the health problems at the end. He I heard some JBL audio on him. I heard some Cornette audio on him. I heard some other people talk about him, and they all say he was just a big, friendly country boy, that everybody liked and everybody liked to ride with, got along with everybody, rarely had heat with many people. And he did have some problems. I was watching one shoot with him, and it got a little dark. I mean, he talked about how he regretted, like a lot of guys from his era, he regretted being on the road so much because he said maybe his kids would have turned out better. And he said that both of his son and his daughter had been in and out of prison their whole lives.
Yeah.
His daughter got out of prison, and at least as of whenever that shoot was taped, got her shit together. The son went to prison for a number of years, got out, and then immediately went back in. And in fact, Bart and his wife were raising his son's kid. So, and he really talked about how, if he had been home, he was blaming himself basically. If I had been home more, maybe they would have turned out to be better people. But I'm trying to do better with my second chance because I'm raising his son now. It was really like shitty to listen to. I felt real bad for him, because it really felt like he was placing a lot of that blame on himself for how his kids turned out based on the fact that he was always on the road.
Yeah, his business. This business chewed up people and spit them out and destroyed a lot of families, unfortunately.
I get the impression the son is still in prison. The son that went back. But yeah, it was a small child, relatively small child that he was raising with his wife. But yeah, then he got sick and he kept it quiet for a long time. And I think in 2023, he announced that he had the cancer. And then, like you said at the top, it reached stage 4. And like a lot of people choose to do, he chose to get off the chemo and enjoy whatever little time he had left without being constantly sick from the chemo. And basically, a lot of people just come to grips when the doctors say, hey, look, we can keep doing the chemo. It's probably not going to help. And then it becomes a personal choice. Do you keep fighting till the very end, or do you try to just enjoy the rest of whatever time you have? He chose option B, and it wasn't very long. I think the news broke that he was off his treatments, a month ago?
Yeah, it was about a month. Yeah, it did not take long, unfortunately.
And that's it. So I think he was 72?
74, I want to say. Let me 76.
76.
That's a good run though. That's a good run. 76.
Yeah, it's a good run. Good run. He had a better career than I think people think. He worked those 2 Starrcade shows. He worked in a lot of different places. You don't get the impression he was a wealthy man, but you don't get the impression he blew all his money either. Because, he had that piece of land that he lived on. And, he's a guy that if you were of a certain age, he was constantly on your TV for about 8 to 10 years, and whether it was on TBS or the WWF. And, thanks to Chris Adams, he'll go down as an ex-world champion. you know, and you can't take that from him, you know, and so that's Black Bart.
There's Black Bart, man. Did you think we were going to get that much audio on Black Bart? Where else are you going to get that much audio on the life and career of Black Bart? Nowhere else.
Last week when they brought up he died, I mean, I was like, I mean, that's the wheelhouse of my years. I mean, I knew I could talk about him, but I learned a lot in the research I did during the course of the week, though. So it helped from that standpoint. You know, if we had done it last week, a lot of those little details wouldn't have been in there because I wasn't aware of them. Right. You know, I did learn a lot about the guy, and you know, there weren't as many matches of his on YouTube that I thought there would be, though.
There's a lot of the job stuff. Unfortunately, there's a lot of the job stuff, and the other stuff is a little harder to find. The tag stuff, the just normal matches that he has. There's some out there, but normally if you go to YouTube and just type in Black Bart Black Bart match or whatever, the majority of the results you're going to get are just WWF job ones. And you should watch more than that. You should not. The ones you talk about, Rock and Roll, the Garvin, Manny Fernandez, I was just checking as you were talking. All those are pretty easy to find. You just got to type in Black Bart, Thunderfoot, or Black Bart, Manny Fernandez, or Black Bart Rock and Rolls. You'll be able to find it. I would say do that, because if you do Black Bart versus, you're just going to get a lot of.
You don't get much.
No, you get a Nikolai Volkov, 5-minute squash. You get a Shane Douglas 5-minute squash. Like that's not enough. That's not going to give you the proper context.
And it's because there's not a lot of Florida stuff out there, period. Florida, there's not as much Florida footage out there as you think. I thought thered be more of his stuff with Bass from Mid-Atlantic. But here's the thing. Peacock's going to have all that. Peacock's going to have both of his Starrcade matches. Peacock is going to have a lot of that Mid-Atlantic TV from when he was there is what Peacock has, right? They haven't taken any of that stuff down, right?
If you're in the U.S. on Peacock, a lot of that, all that is still available.
Yeah, and he, like I said, there was about a 3 or 4 year period there. I would say from about 84 to 86, 84, 86, 84, 87, where he really was a sneaky good worker, like way better than I remembered. Like I was watching these matches and I was like, holy shit, he's way better than I thought. I think that he was a better worker in that period than Bass was, but Bass I thought was a better talker. And Bass had a more commanding screen presence, I thought, too. He was a bigger guy. He had a better look. Similar gimmicks, obviously, both, doing the cowboy gimmicks. One with the whip, one with the I forgot the name of the gimmick again. Branding iron.
The branding iron, yeah.
But essentially the same gimmick. But yeah, that's Black Bart.
All right, and we'll do Bob Uecker here too, and then get to the meat and potatoes of the show here. So Bob Uecker, the news came out earlier today that he had passed away. Now he was 90 years old. 90 years old. He was really close to 91. January 26th would have been his birthday in 1934. So really, really close to getting to 91, but unfortunately passes away at 90 years old. And Bob Uecker, famous for, obviously said the wrestling connection right there. He is a WWE Hall of Famer. So if you want the wrestling connection for him, he appeared at WrestleMania 3. He was the ring announcer for the Hulk Hogan Andre the Giant match. He then came back WrestleMania 4. That was the one at Trump Plaza as a commentator, backstage interviewer, and that's the one where Andre the Giant chokes him. The famous gif that you've probably seen or video you've seen of Andre the Giant choking Bob Uecker. So he has a WWF connection, WWE connection. There, a little bit of a wrestling connection, but he's a guy that, normally we'd come on this and do a whole big, this is a baseball guy and here's a baseball guy through and through, but he was a dude who kind of went beyond baseball. Like, yes, he was a very well-known, legendary baseball announcer, legendary as well for, working for the Milwaukee Brewers, 54 seasons, I believe, as the Brewers commentator, broadcaster. Also, a lot of that solo. He was one of those guys, like a Vince Scully, like those other guys, that would just do it solo. It was just Bob Uecker. That was it. Occasionally some guys would jump in and out, and occasionally he'd interview people. But for the most part, you were listening to a Brewers game on the radio. You were hearing Bob Uecker by himself, commentating the entire game, giving you stories, doing all that sort of stuff, doing the play-by-play. Really kind of a stand-up routine like that. That's kind of what he's known. Where Vince Scully was known as very much like the wax poetic about the game of baseball and wax poetic about life and the stories of life and all these different things from Vince Scully. Bob Uecker's out there doing a stand-up routine every single night, basically doing a late night talk show while commentating a baseball game at the same time. And that sort of helped him grow a little bit further into literally the late night ring, where he started to show up on Johnny Carson. He started doing blooper shows. He started hosting those sort of things. And then he ends up getting his own fucking TV show, Mr. Belvedere. Mr. Belvedere. He plays the role as what was it, George Owens, I think, or George Owens was the name? I didn't watch much about Mr. Belvedere, but
I've seen probably every episode of Mr. Belvedere. He was the dad, and Mr. Belvedere was their housekeeper.
Okay, but he was George or something, right? Wasn't his name George?
Sitcom. That sounds about right. And then so he had the wife, the redheaded wife, the son, the daughter, typical sitcom of the era, family sitcom. Yeah. And Mr. Belvedere was their British housekeeper who he called Lynn. He'd be like, he called him Lynn, which was his first name. Everybody else called him Mr. Belvedere. And sort of the conflict. Like, he's this blue collar American guy. This is this hoity-toity British housekeeper. Hilarity ensues.
You can get the jokes. Yeah, you get the jokes from there. So,
did you ever hear the funny story about the oh shit? What was the actor that played Mr. Belvedere? It was
I don't know that I've seen a couple of clips from Mr. Belvedere, but I don't know that I've actually ever sat down and watched a ton of it.
So it was he was Christopher Hewitt was the British guy who played Mr. Belvedere. There's a famous story of how he sat on his own balls and injured himself one time.
I've done it.
You never heard that?
I've kind of done it before. It's not fun.
Mr. Belvedere sits on own balls. Let's see if anything.
What a search result.
Yeah, there you go. The infamous Mr. Belvedere story is actually true. Here is the first thing that comes up. So it's a long article, but yeah, he sat on his own balls. Here's the incident. So my favorite was Adam Sandler story. So Adam Sandler had a small part on the show Mr. Belvedere earlier in his career. On his first day, everyone was sitting at a huge table waiting to start the read-through of that week's show. The old guy who played Mr. Belvedere hadn't shown up yet, so everyone was drinking coffee and talking until he arrived. Finally, Mr. Belvedere walked in a sweatsuit and matching monogrammed attaché case.
Oh, incredible.
When the old guy took his seat, he sang out, "Good morning, everybody," like a British Ted Baxter. As he took a load off, he apparently sat on one of his own testicles. With his nuts scrunched under his leg, he screamed, "Oh!" and had to be carried out.
That's pretty bad to have to be carried out.
The guy sat on his own balls and had to be carried out on a stretcher. And Adam Sandler and Bob Uecker witnessed this in real time. That's a Mad Lib. That story is a fucking Mad Lib. Adam Sandler and Bob Uecker witness Christopher Hewitt sitting on his own balls and then carried out on a stretcher. So, I will never forget that story. But yeah, Mr. Belvedere, typical. You see the jokes coming a mile away.
Right.
But Uecker, it was just, infamous for how funny he was and how quick-witted he was. And obviously the Miller Lite commercials, the famous one where the usher comes to get him and he's like, "Oh, this isn't your seat, Mr. Uecker." He's like, "Oh, I must be in the front row." Right.
Yeah.
That's the famous line that became the big line, but then they actually take him up into the fucking, he's in the worst seat in the house. He's in the nosebleeds.
And they sell those tickets at Brewers games. They have Uecker seats. They're $1 obstructed view seats. I have sat in one of those before. I bought one of those ones behind a pole. It's very funny. Yeah, it's got its own little color or whatever, and it's like, you are in the Uecker seats, and you paid $1 for it or whatever. It's pretty cool. It's nice
become a euphemism. Like people know what that means now who don't even know who he is. If you say, "Oh, I'm in the Uecker seats," that's just something that sports fans, they know what that is. It's, "Oh, you have bad seats," And that was from that commercial. He did all those Miller Lite commercials, and like you said, him calling the game was almost, he made it entertaining because he was so fast and quick-witted, and he was a master of the self-deprecating humor because he was a terrible baseball player.
Yeah, awful player.
He's a career 200 hitter. Now listen, he was on the 1964 Cardinals team that won the World Series. He was Tim McCarver's backup catcher on that team. Okay, so he has a World Series ring. Now, he didn't play in that World Series. He didn't get into a game, but he was Tim McCarver's catcher all year on that 1964 Cardinals team. He hit 194. He played in 40 games, but he was Tim McCarver's primary catcher. That was that team with obviously Bob Gibson, Ken Boyer, Lou Brock, Kurt Flood. Who else would have been on that team? I don't know, but those would have been the stars of the team. And I heard a story today. I heard Bob Costas tell a story that before one of the games, there was a marching band. And Euchre was like, well, I know I'm not going to play. So he went up to the tuba player and asked him if he could borrow the tuba. And he took the tuba into the outfield during batting practice and was shagging fly balls with the tuba, like catching the fly balls inside the tuba, just goofing around until his manager, I guess it would have been Johnny Keane on that 64 Cardinals team, was like, Euchre, what the fuck you doing? And the tuba ended up being damaged, and the marching band sued the Cardinals, and they took the money out of his World Series paycheck. But because he was out in the outfield fucking around with the tuba, shagging fly balls, catching them in the tuba. So that's Euchre. That's a Euchre story if there ever was one, And it's just a huge personality. Obviously, the major league movies where he stole the show.
Oh, he's the best part of those movies by far. And those are good. Those are great movies, but Euchre is the absolute best part of Major League by far.
Yeah. He as the cranky announcer watching this terrible team, and the just a bit outside, which is another famous line now that came from Bob Euchre that people still use today. The bits on Johnny Carson, which are hilarious. I mean, people need to go watch those when he would come on the Carson show, and the great chemistry that they had. He was a national baseball announcer in the 70s and 80s before he took the full-time job with the Brewers to be there. And he was the kind of guy where, a lot like when Vince Scully was at the end and Dick Enberg, when he was calling games for the Padres at the end of the line, I would always go out of my way and try to remember a couple times a year to listen to those guys call a game.
Oh, always. I would routinely listen to Euchre if it was late and I wasn't doing anything in the summer. There's nothing like a summer, and I would do it if I had extra innings or MLB TV or whatever, or whatever it may be. If I was on a long drive or I was just hanging out in the backyard or whatever, find a Brewers game, Brewers home game, listen on the radio, and just let Euchre do his thing, man. And he was still at it. He was still sharp until the final season. Like, real good. And it was true of all those guys, too. Those guys all were very, very sharp until the end. But Euchre, in particular, I adored listening to Bob Euchre. He even more so than a Vince Scully and a Dick Enberg, and I'm not taking anything away from those guys. I liked the Euchre approach to doing the game much better. And I thought he was just, I made sure to do it multiple times every summer. Just sit in the backyard, listen to Bob Euchre call a game.
Bob Costas was saying that sometimes when he would call the Brewer games, they'd bring guests up to the booth, like people who'd win contests or, whatever, and he would use the cough button. So he would call the game straight, right? Like, here comes whoever up to the plate. He's got 26 home runs. Then he'd hit the cough button and do like an alternate feed to entertain whoever was in the booth, right? So he'd call it straight. Then he'd hit the cough button and be like, this guy stinks. He's out of shape. He'll be out of the league in 2 years.
I can't wait till we get rid of this guy.
And then, right. Then he'd let go and go just a bit inside, 1-0 count. They'd hit the cough button again and then make another joke and rip somebody, So, and that's, just kind of, that's his sense of humor, and he was close friends with Costas, and Costas would ask him, Costas would see him do this, and he'd be like, aren't you afraid you're going to slip up and say, curse on the air, say something you're not supposed to say? And Euchre would always tell him, what are they going to do, Bob? Throw me in baseball jail? Who cares?
Right. They do fire me? What? I don't care.
Yeah. I'm Bob Euchre. They're not going to fire me. What are they going to do? So, just an all-time personality, and again, he was so self-deprecating about his career, and he didn't have a great career. I mean, backup catcher for, 4 or 5 years. He was born in Milwaukee, and he played for the Milwaukee Braves his first couple seasons. And then, of course, like I said, he won the World Series with the Cardinals, and then ended up back in Milwaukee calling games for the Brewers. So a real Milwaukee guy. And, a lot of the basis of his humor and his, even dabbled in stand-up a little bit was based on how terrible of a baseball player he was. But like we talk about all the time, I mean, he was probably the 0.1% of all.
Right. He's one of the greatest
athletes.
baseball players that has ever played the game of baseball, just by virtue of
With
making
5 years in the
leagues.
majors.
Yeah.
Yeah. He probably had a cannon of a fucking arm. You know, he's a catcher. You know, in his prime, he probably threw fucking lasers. You know what I mean? And it's funny because I was looking earlier today. I think his final year in AAA, he hit like 340. You know what I mean? So it's just such a big difference between the minors and you get to the majors. It's just you're playing among the elite of the elite. He had 309 his final year in the 309, 422, 510 his final year in the minor leagues. So you know, obviously he was a skilled athlete and a great athlete and all that. It's just you know, major league sports are very fucking difficult. But you know, he didn't take himself too seriously, and yeah, he's just a real lovable character, and always was, and he was a perfect fit for that era of WWF too. You mentioned the famous GIF where Andre's choking him with those big hands, you know, and so yeah, Bob Uecker, that's a sad one.
Yeah, that hurts.
He had beaten pancreatic cancer, which is like the hardest one to beat, and again, didn't tell anybody except his close friends. Had multiple heart surgeries, and then I guess he had this new cancer that you know, he didn't want any attention. He didn't tell anyone, and it caught him. Everyone's playing that final line of his final game where they lost in the playoffs this year, where in hindsight, you could tell that he knows it's over. You know, the way he delivers the final line of the Brewers season ending. And it's like in hindsight, you could tell it's almost like he knew he wasn't going to call another game, you know, which,
I really wish they won a World Series during his time, man. I really do. They got close. They had a lot of good playoff runs. He saw a lot of good seasons, but yeah, never got to call a World Series for the Brewers, and that kind of sucks. But yeah.
No, I called the '82 World Series, right? So they lost. But,
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
You know, that was that Robin Yount.
That's a long time ago. It's a lot of baseball games to call since he called but yeah, you're right. It was 82.
So he would have called that, right? I mean, I
believe, yeah, he would have.
So I don't know if he was still doing national by then or if he was doing both. Some guys do both. But yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, that's their only World Series appearance, the Brewers, right? Mm-hmm. They were never in another World Series.
Nope.
I mean, they had those really good teams with you know, when Christian Yelich was in his, you know, the early part of this decade, they're good, you know, they had good teams right to the end. They won 90 games.
That's what I mean. Yeah, they got real close. These last couple of years, it felt like there was the 1 year, I forget where they got like, they were, you know, up 3-1 over the Dodgers or something. It might have been I don't know if it was 2020 or sometime recently. They were, you know, real close, and then just for whatever reason, just lost in the 2018. Sorry,
2018.
They got to Game 7 of the NLCS and lost, and it's like fuck. You know, that was Yelich's MVP season, I believe. If I have that correctly. But yeah, then, you know, made the playoffs a bunch of years after that, just never could quite get there. 2011, they were in the, that was the Ryan Braun, Prince Fielder.
That's why they traded for CC Sabathia.
Yeah, where they said, CC, we know you're not re-signing with the Brewers, so we're going to pitch you every fucking night until you leave. And CC said, sure, all right, whatever. Yeah, so this guy started every third game, came in relief, pitched 125. You know, they didn't give a fuck. They're like, there's no chance in hell you're re-signing with the Brewers, so we're going to use you as much as we can. And they got all the way to the NLCS, but unfortunately, I did not make it to the actual. Did not make it to the World Series.
Was that was we got the wrong year. 2008 was the Sabathia year.
Oh, okay.
I think it was 2008.
What was 2011? I forget if it just everything kind of worked for them that year. I forget what.
I had the same group of players for the most part.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was 08 where they traded for Sabathia and kept pitching him on like 2 days rest.
Right.
Just sending him out there.
Sent him out there at 2 days rest, 150 pitches. I think one time they brought him in into relief. He had pitched the day before. They brought him in as relief. They're just like, come on, you're fine. And as far as I remember, he was like pretty good the entire time. Like he was. I think maybe finally in the NLCS he did start, or NLDS he started to slow down a little bit. But he basically got them into the playoffs single-handedly because they just pitched him every single night.
Yeah, he was a horse. I mean, it's the same guys from 2011: Prince Fielder, Ryan Braun, JJ Hardy,
Ricky Weeks, Ricky Weeks.
Yes.
Giovanni Gallardo. Yeah, Giovanni Gallardo. Yeah.
Ben Sheets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Ben Sheets.
Want to just name some guys? Want to name some Brewers?
Let's name some Brewers. I'll be here all day. Niger Morgan. Let's go. I'll name Brewers all fucking day. They're kind of my obviously, being here in Chicago. Always checked out the Brewers. So yeah, I can name some Brewers.
Yeah. So yeah, Bob Uecker. That's
Jonathan Lucroy
said about that one. Oh, Lucroy, yeah.
Jonathan Lucroy, yeah. Obviously, Craig Counsell later became the manager.
Yeah, before he betrayed them and went to the Cubs. Right?
Right, yeah. But then they didn't make the playoffs.
Affection.
If the Cubs didn't make the playoffs, and the Brewers did without him. So you know what? Take that.
Yeah.
Craig.
Yeah, stick it to him. Fuck that guy.
Hit the bricks, fucker. Yeah. Anyway. All right, so that is Bob Uecker, Black Bart, and
Hunter Q. Robbins the third.
It was so long ago that I forgot about that. So
the turd, as Terry Funk would call him. Hunter Q. Robbins the turd.
The turd.
Yes. That's such a Terry Funk. Hunter Q. Robbins the turd.
I'm going to call him a turd. He's a turd. We heard you, Terry.
Yeah.
He's nothing but a turd. All right. Yeah. We got you, Terry. He's not Hunter Q. Robbins. We know Terry the third. He's okay, Terry. Hunter Q. Robbins the turd.
What about Terry at the end of the very first episode of ECW, where Todd Gordon is putting everything over and setting up the next week, and Terry signs off the show with, "Now listen, fans, we know it wasn't very good, but we promise it's going to get better." And Todd Gordon's like, "What the fuck, Terry?
You don't have to do that. You don't have to.
We promise it's going to get better.
We're trying here. We got to give us some time as we're trying to work the kinks out, but it'll be better." Terry. Just say it was a great show.
Terry Funk, though. What are you going to say to him?
He can't. Yeah. Terry, yeah. Like, you're not going to fire Bob Uecker, and Todd Gore's not going to say, "Terry, come on."
Are they going to throw him in wrestling jail? What are you going to do to him? You can't do nothing to him.
It's Terry Funk. Oh, God. There we go. Professional wrestling. It's the best. All right. Let's go to AEW. Not the best. Just talked about this very bizarre rollout. I wrote about this earlier today at flagshippatreon.com. You talked about it a little bit in your Thursday Dynamite review, also available on flagshippatreon.com. But the bizarre rollout of AEW's Grand Slam Australia airtime, which began yesterday on Dynamite. So yesterday on Dynamite, they have the Women's Casino Battle Royal. Toni Storm wins. They flash up a graphic that says Grand Slam Australia, Mariah May versus Toni Storm. It's going to happen Saturday, February 15th, 7 Central. TNT and Max. Okay, so it's not going to happen on that day. It can't happen on that day. It cannot air at 7 Central on TNT on Saturday, February 15th, because there's a big issue with that. TNT has something else going on Saturday, February 15th, 7 Central on TNT and Max, and that is NBA All-Star Weekend. One of the biggest events in the NBA calendar, one of the biggest events in Turner Sports, WBD Sports. The final year that TNT is going to have that game as well, or have that weekend, the All-Star Weekend, all that is all finishing up this year because it's going to go to NBC next year. So this is it. So they are not going to air Grand Slam Australia. No matter what they say or whatever's been promoted, there's no chance in fucking hell that Grand Slam Australia is going to air on TNT at 7 Central. Now, there was also an accompanying tweet that came out with that clarified that it was not 8 a.m. 7 Central, because some people theorized, maybe they mean 8 a.m. 7 Central, which makes no fucking sense that they would air the show on Saturday mornings. But they proved that was not the case because there was a tweet that came out that said 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. So again, that's what they promoted yesterday. They had a graphic up there. They had a tweet out there. And if you went to the All Elite Wrestling website and went to the event page for Grand Slam Australia, that same graphic was up there. Grand Slam Australia airing Saturday, February 15th on TNT and Max at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. Not going to happen. Now, that is obviously on tape delay because the show is going to be happening, I think, at like 1:30 Eastern, I think, or something like that. I forget the exact timing, but it's going to be in the middle of the night for Eastern and Central times. So this would be a tape delayed show that they advertised, again, as happening at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on Saturday, February 15th. That's not going to happen. So today, now, you know, when you did the Thursday Dynamite review, there had been no clarification about that. All the tweets were still up there. All the graphics were still up there. Everything was still up there. Today, there's a new graphic up and a new promotional tweet out there that says Timeless Tony versus Mariah May, Tony Storm versus Mariah May, Grand Slam Australia, Saturday, February 15th, TNT Max, with no time listed. So they have taken the time off of the graphics and off of the promotional materials thus far for Grand Slam Australia. Joe, why is this so fucking hard?
I don't even know what to say. It's embarrassing.
The fuck? Can we figure out what the hell is happening here? What are you doing? Why are you advertising that this shit's going to air Saturday, February 15th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central on TNT and Max when it's not going to air on that time? There's no fucking way it's going to air on that time. So at some point, someone had to, I would hope that either AEW asked TNT or TNT clarified with it, whatever. I don't know who's the problem. I'm going to go with AEW because they've had, this is not the first time that they've had these issues. AEW should know better too. How do you put that out to the world that you are going to air this thing on Saturday, February 15th on TNT at 8 p.m. 7 Central? You can't let that hit anywhere. Someone has to see that and say, All-Star Weekend? All-Star Saturday? That's not happening. What's going on here? So now they have new graphics with no time announced. So they falsely advertised a time yesterday. Now there's no time announced. We have no fucking idea when the show's going to air. No clue. No idea. What the fuck? Why is this hard?
I don't understand how they don't know. WB, how do they not know at this point when this is going to air? Because they clearly don't.
They don't know when it's going to air.
They clearly realize someone screwed up. There was some lack of communication, which caused the first wave of advertisements to go out for the regularly scheduled Collision time, which it obviously cannot air with the NBA stuff going on. So they recognize that people picked up on that. They've now just taken the time off of the advertisements, and we don't know when it's airing because they don't know when it's airing. How do you not know when it's airing by this point? It's baffling that I don't even know what to say. What are we even supposed to? This is why we don't get our signs in the building. I mean, what do you say? How does this happen?
This is one of the most embarrassing things they've done maybe ever. I mean, it just speaks to the complete and utter lack of one hand talking to the other, the graphics department talking to the events department, whatever. I don't know the department. I don't know the hierarchy in AEW, but for that thing to make TV, for that graphic to make TV saying that this thing is going to air on the day and the time that they said it's going to air on, and nobody bringing this up and nobody saying, well, hold on a minute, are we sure? Are we sure? Like, because I think I saw some theories that said, well, AEW probably just said, oh, well, we'll just air it when Collision's going to air. Instead of Collision that night, we'll air Grand Slam Australia. Now, were they sloppy / confident enough to just say, fuck it, yeah, put that graphic up there and I'm sure it'll be fine? Or did they clarify through TNT and TNT didn't? Like, I find it hard to believe that if they reached out to WBD or TNT and said, hey, are we good to go on Saturday, February 15th at 7 p.m.? I cannot fathom that anybody in WBD or TNT wouldn't immediately know about All-Star Weekend. That's a huge thing. That's one of the biggest events on their entire calendar. There is I find it nearly impossible that they could contact anybody that they know at that network and ask about that time and somebody say, yeah, sure, no problem, yeah, you guys are good, advertise it away. I can't believe that they did that. There's no way. My presumption was that it would be airing on TBS and they accidentally put TNT on the graphic out of habit. You know what I mean? Whoever makes the graphic maybe wasn't aware. Nobody communicated to him. I could see that happening. And then you end up with TNT. But I figured later on in the day, they would just put out different graphics with the same time and date, but with TBS instead of TNT. Which, okay, maybe it's not optimal to schedule against yourself, but it is what it is. And there's two events happening at the same time, right? I figured that was the simple error. But clearly it wasn't. No. It's not airing on TBS because the updated graphic doesn't list a time anymore. Yeah, it still says TNT. TNT. Yeah, so it still says TNT with no time. Now, obviously, that's not an ideal thing either, because if you're WBD and you have live sports properties that you pay money for, you don't necessarily want them going head to head. There's no need to do that. You don't have to have this show that's taking place 9 to 10 hours before. You don't have to force that show to air head to head with one of your biggest sports properties that you have on one of its biggest weekends the last time you're going to air it. That's going to be a big deal. That is going to be a very big deal. TNT has had NBA All-Star Weekend for 20 years or so at this point. It's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a lot of nostalgia. It's going to be a lot of celebration of the TNT having this property for as many years as they've had, and all the great moments and all the great people and all the great memories and all these sort of things that are going. So they're going to want to put a lot of effort into that, and it's a big deal. They want a lot of people to watch that. It's one of the biggest things that they do in their sports calendar. So the idea that one of the other sports properties they're paying millions of dollars to is also going to air something at the exact same time, but it's just going to be on a different network. That's just I don't know. You wouldn't do that. There's no need to do that. You don't have to. It's like you're not in this situation where this thing is airing live and you're like, well, fuck, there's no other time it's live, so we'll show it. This is a tape-delayed show. You could show this whenever the hell you want. You don't even have to show it on your TV if you really don't want to. You can just stuff it on a Max or whatever. So the idea that they were going to air this thing on TBS, I also didn't really buy either, because I don't know why WBD would want to do that. I don't know why WBD would want to say, hey, let's try to potentially take eyeballs away from NBA All-Star Saturday and put them to Grand Slam Australia. And on the flip side, why do you want Grand Slam Australia to just get murdered in the ratings by NBA All-Star Saturday, as well as the WWE NXT show Vengeance Day, which is also taking place at the exact same time? So there's just no need to put it on TBS on that night. So I understand your theory that, that might, because I think when this all came out, we were all trying to figure out, okay, where'd the mistake come? Who screwed up? Whatever. Now we're at the point where they don't know. They have no fucking idea what time this thing is airing. They have not figured that out. They haven't planned it. They don't know whatever, because, your theory of, oh, shit, they meant to say TBS and they said TNT, they'll just change the graphic to TBS. That's out of the window now, because it's still apparently on TNT, but we don't know when the fuck it's airing. It's baffling. What the fuck? This company is way too old to be making mistakes like this. It is. It's just way too old. There's too many people getting paid, too many people in the room, all these things. That how does this not ever this is beyond sloppy.
I don't think they're worried about the NBA stuff hurting. I don't think they're worried about the wrestling hurting the NBA stuff, and I think ultimately at the end of the day they're going to take the dopey movie off of TBS and air it on TBS at the same time. That's what I think they're going to do, and it's just going to do a bad number because it's going up against the NBA. The wrestling will do a bad number, but I think they're going to air it on TBS. Why wouldn't you put that, even going against the NBA stuff, it's going to do a better number than the movie would do. So why would you not put it there and just put it on Max instead? That doesn't make sense to me.
Why would you? Right? Well, why does it have to be on at 8/7 Central?
It doesn't. But that's the regular time that Collision's usually on, so they might look at it as, all right, well, the wrestling fans are expecting Collision to be on 8/7 Central. Let's just give it to them at 8/7 Central like we always do. We'll just move it over to TBS. And Collision will do a much worse number than it usually does, but it's going to do a better number than the movie would do. I think that's what they're going to settle on. This is a mess. But because if you're not going to put it on 8, when are you going to put it on? That NBA stuff is on all fucking night. It's on from like...
Yeah, well, I would say what you could probably do, and what I would maybe do, is you air it live on Max. You do Grand Slam. If people wake up at 1 a.m. and watch it, they can watch it. In the morning or whatever. Right, whenever they want to watch it, they can watch it. Put it up there on Max Live, and it'll be on demand for whenever people might watch it when they wake up or whatever, and then air it. What I would do is I would have it be the lead into the NBA All-Star stuff. I would have it. It's not an ideal situation, but maybe you get some extra eyeballs on the main event. Maybe you get some extra eyeballs on it. I would have it as the lead into All-Star Weekend and have it start on 5 or whatever, 5 p.m. Right. Whatever it may be. That'll do no worse than it would do head to head on Saturday when you have wrestling competition and NBA competition.
That's a better idea. You can put it on before. You can even put it on after and put it on in the middle of the night.
Sure.
I mean, you could use the NBA stuff as a lead-in instead of using the wrestling as the lead-in. Those are both good ideas too.
Actually, having it after the All-Star Weekend actually kind of works too. I don't hate that either. Have the dunk contest end and then say, hey, stick around, Grand Slam Australia coming up in a couple of minutes.
Promote it the whole time.
Yeah, that would work.
Promote it the whole time. Yeah. You could even have people that didn't go to Australia at the NBA stuff. A little cross promotion. There's a lot of ideas.
All better ideas than the one that they promoted. The only idea that doesn't work is the one that they promoted to their live audience.
They don't even know what they're doing.
Right.
They don't even know what they're doing.
God.
That's the thing. They don't even have a plan. It's clear that no one knows what's happening. That's the embarrassing part. Even if it was just on Max, even if it was on TBS, even if it was any of these ideas were thrown around, they don't have an idea. There's no plan here.
Over the past 75 years, more than 10,000 chemicals have entered our food supply, but the EU allows just 300 additives. At Thrive Market, we prioritize quality, banning over 1,000 ingredients found in conventional grocery stores. Our Healthy Swap scanner helps you find better versions of your pantry essentials without the junk, dyes, or fillers, and everything is delivered right to your doorstep. So shop at a grocery store that actually cares about your health at thrivemarket.com/get-started for 30% off your first order and a free $60 gift.
That's embarrassing to not even know what you're doing, at least as we do this live show.
Just weird. They're such a weird company, and they don't have to be. It doesn't have to be this way, but it is. So
how
stay
was this
tuned.
not worked out a month ago?
I don't know.
How was this not worked out?
Nobody has this Australia show, man. I'll tell you, this has been from the beginning to here to when it eventually airs, whenever the fuck it airs. This thing's a disaster, this Grand Slam Australia show. Going from, promoting it in a stadium to moving it to a smaller building to now whatever the hell this is where nobody, we're a month out, which people might say, hey, we're a month out. Relax. It's like, no, they're promoting it. They're the ones already promoting it. I don't have to fucking relax or chill out. They're the ones that put a graphic up on their show, their main show, their flagship show, and said, hey, this is the time to watch the show. And that was incorrect. And now a day later, they're saying, no, that time's wrong. Never mind. The time to watch the show is, we don't know. Stay tuned. No, they should have this figured out a month ahead of time. It's a month out. Yes, I know it's a month out. We should fucking know when the hell we can watch the show a month out. That should not be it just shouldn't be this difficult. Everything in this company seems so difficult and arduous, and it doesn't have to be. What is happening? Why? It's 5 years in. Come on. Get this infrastructure set up. Let's go. God. Anyway. Speaking of infrastructure, here's some updated, upcoming AEW schedule stuff, because they've actually announced a few matches for future Dynamite, so I want to quickly check in with those. This is the Collision has been taped today, so no spoilers here, but this week's Collision is going to have a Texas Death Match, Christopher Daniels and Adam Page, Continental Championship, Kazuchika Okada defending against Tomohiro Ishii, and Powerhouse Hobbs, Cash Wheeler, Cope, the Radar Superstar Cope, Dax Harwood, Truth Magnum, Turbo Floyd versus Claudio, Moxley, Big Bill, Brian Keith, Chris Jericho, the 12-man tag. That's got everybody very upset. Next week's Dynamite in Knoxville, the Rated R Superstar Cope versus Pac. Then they're going to Daly's Place on Saturday, January 25th. Back to Daly's Place for AEW Collision Homecoming. Then the 29th, they're in Huntsville, Alabama for a Dynamite Collision thing. And then February 5th, I don't know if you saw this, but February 5th at the Gateway Center in Atlanta, Georgia, that's where they're going to do Ricochet versus Swerve Strickland. So they're not going to keep Swerve Ricochet apart until the pay-per-view. They're going to do it, apparently, here on February 5th at Dynamite in Atlanta, Ricochet versus Swerve Strickland.
Alrighty. And
then, of course, we know Grand Slam Australia. We know that Timeless. I keep calling Timeless Tony, but she'll be Timeless Tony there. We all know that. But Grand Slam Australia, you're going to have Tony versus Mariah as all that's been announced so far for that show, which started off as like a big time stadium show and a big time pay per view thing, and then now it just looked like it'd probably just be a 2-hour random show. So,
all right. So this guy in the chat says, I think when it was originally made, it was a stadium and thus a pay-per-view. Thus, they wouldn't have a problem running against the NBA. That's all true, and I think he's right. The problem is, how long ago did they take it out of the stadium and presumably at that point take it off pay-per-view?
Yeah, let me find out when it switched over from...
It's weeks ago.
Many
weeks. At that point, you have to say, all right, what's on our broadcast partner's schedule if we're now moving this to TV? And apparently nobody did that. Nobody knew until today that there was something already on TNT.
It's something big. It's not even, you know what I mean? It's NBA All-Star. It's all the thing about NBA All-Star Saturday. It's always on the same fucking weekend. It's always been this weekend. As long as it's existed, it's this weekend. It's the weekend that they're announcing it. Yes.
And we know that nobody knew till today, because if it was just a matter of someone screwing up the graphic, they would have put the correct time and date, but they didn't. There's no time anymore.
No, there's no time. Yeah.
That shows you they have no clue when it's airing.
A month ago, they redid the show. So 2 months. Sorry, 2 months ago. 2 months ago, at this point. So sometime in either late November, early December, they switched the date. So they've had that amount of time to decide when the fuck this thing was going to air. You can't defend them on this. You know what I mean? Like, don't try. Just don't defend them on this.
I don't think that person's trying to defend them.
No. I know. I'm just saying in general, like, this is not the opportunity this is not the time to say, hey, actually, what I think might be happening is like, it's hard to apply any logic to this very, very illogical situation.
Logic to it.
Yeah.
There's no, it was planned for something else. Maybe we were going to stream it. Maybe it was a pay-per-view. Well, either way, that if that idea went out the window when they moved it, you still don't know. You don't know right now how or where it's airing. That's unacceptable. And you've already misadvertised one fucking time and date. Because the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. Neither hand knows what it's doing.
No, both hands have no fucking clue what either hand is doing. So,
yeah.
Oh God. All right. So that is AEW. I guess speaking of American wrestling promotions that can be sloppy at times, GCW gives it another go this weekend in Hammerstein for the People versus GCW this Sunday. They're back yet again. Now, attendance-wise, they got there. Now, despite all of Effie's hand-wringing and getting all upset, it looks like latest update from WrestleTix is to be about 1,500 people in the building. They have about 5 tickets still out there, so it looks like they're going to be able to get to that, the 1,500. Now, the first Hammerstein show had roughly 2,000 people in the building, so they initially set this show up for a little over 2,000. Obviously, did not get that and reduced capacity.
What do you mean they got there? You think this is a positive?
No, it's not a positive. I would say, you know what? I would say it's a positive because if you saw that ticket map not that long ago, it was looking pretty dire there for a while. There was a long time where they were under 1,000. I'd say getting to 1,500 is a success. And actually, this is even a bigger because of the setup that AEW brought to the building in terms of an entrance ramp and all that sort of stuff too, or not the entrance ramp, but like some of the camera stuff and some of the monitors and whatnot. Dynamite Collision in Hammerstein was $1,491, so this is probably going to be above that show at 1,500. Now, again, like I said, it looked dire. So when I'm saying getting there, I don't mean that in a very positive, but I'm saying that they had like 800 to 900 tickets out, not more than a couple weeks ago. So they had to really work and scratch and claw to get to this 1,500 number. But I would say getting 1,500 in the building again it's not a disaster.
They had over 2,000 last time.
They did. It's GCW, man. I don't know what you want me to tell you. I think 1,500 people buying tickets for GCW to say, we're sorry our first show sucked ass. We promise this one will be better. But, Joe, I'm going to read the card for...
I don't think it's a flop. I wouldn't call it a flop. I can't call this some like big success when they did more fans the first time. I mean, if their goal is just to beat AEW, then, I mean, I guess they did. Because you're saying, it's going to be about the same amount of fans. Yeah, they had 50. AEW had 1,500 for the TV setup. So I don't know, but I don't know how you want to preview this because I don't pay attention to the company.
I'm just going to list the card, and we'll nod along as we list the card, and then we'll
all right.
Probably be reviewing this on next week's Flagship, right? Instant Reaction Live seems dubious for the People versus GCW. I don't know.
What's the date on it?
It's this Sunday. Now your Rams are in the afternoon, right?
Yeah, they're playing it. Yeah, the early game on Sunday.
Okay.
I mean, it's doable.
It's doable. Well, how about we vibe it on Sunday? Okay. I will try to be around. Okay. Yeah, let me know what you think, and we will. I don't know that enough people are going to listen to Instant Reaction Live that it's going to be worth it. And let me read this. How about I read this card, then you can decide if you want to do Instant Reaction Live on Sunday for the People versus GCW. So that is pending. I do not want to promote it. I don't want to have anybody subscribe to the $10 tier, upgrade to the $10 tier, thinking, hey, whoa, I'm going to get the People versus GCW Instant Reaction Live. We don't know. Maybe it might be doable. We will see on Sunday. But all right. Here is the card, Joe. Amazing Red, Grim Reefer, and Homicide versus Griffin McCoy, Kerry Morton, and Tony Deppen. We have a steel cage match. Richard Holiday versus Charles Mason. Megan Bain, new AEW talent Megan Bain versus Atticus Kogar in an intergender match.
So she has to win, right?
I would assume she is going to be defeating Atticus Kogar. Yeah.
Kogar was one of the defectors to Circle 6.
Yeah.
And I guess he's...
back.
He's back.
Yeah. Masato Tanaka versus Joey Janela. Do you think this will go 32 minutes longer than it needs to go in classic Janela fashion? I hope not, but maybe. Matt Cardona versus TBA. It's an open challenge. Whoever wants to take on Matt Cardona will show up there.
Maybe the King of New York, Chris Jericho.
Very possible. Very possible indeed. Little Guido, Super Crazy, and Tajiri versus Los Desperados, Arez, Gringo Loco, and Jack Cartwheel. Does that work for the ECW nostalgia for you?
I mean, why not? Yeah. Looks fine. Yeah.
Blood Sports match. Josh Barnett, your guy, Josh Barnett, versus Tom Pestock, whatever the fuck, FKA Baron Corbin. That's Baron Corbin, guys. Tom Pestock or whatever. So Baron Corbin versus Josh Barnett in a Bloodsport match. That work for you? How's that look?
Sure.
Yeah. This one I know you're all in on. GCW Extreme title and GCW Ultraviolent title unification match. Maki Ito, Matthew Justice, John Wayne Murdoch, Matt Tremont, Rina Yamashita, Brandon Kirk, Dr. Redacted, and Drew Parker.
I was out as soon as you said Maki Ito.
And none of those other names.
No interest whatsoever. That's guaranteed to be a pile of shit.
That's going to be horrible. Yeah, there's no way. Yeah. No way that's not horrible.
Worst match of the year contender on paper.
Is this match still being advertised? I got to check this out. Vikingo versus Sidney Akeem, right? Isn't Vikingo out again?
No, they can't. Vikingo, I don't think is going to be.
He's still out. So okay, that's what I thought.
Have to find something else for the other guy. Just throw him in one of these. Well, I guess you can't throw him into.
I don't think Sidney Akeem's doing the death match, so you might want to find something else for him that's not the death match. Violence is Forever. Dom Guarini and Kevin Koo defending the GCW tag team titles against the Garbage Daddies of Alec Price and Cole Radrick.
Yeah, again, I don't know anything about any of these angles or storylines, so I can't really comment on any of this.
I'm just listing. I'm just saying names. You don't have to worry about it. GCW World Title number one contendership match. I know you're in for this one. Effie versus the Alley Cat. Alley Catch.
Yeah.
Versus Effie. GCW number one contendership.
Yeah, I mean, if that was in my backyard, I'd be drawing the blinds. I don't know why anyone would want to watch it, but again, they were the. What was the butthole tag team name they had? The Bussy.
Bussy, yes.
They were Bussy, and then they broke up, and I'm sure there's a tremendous storyline behind all of this.
Bussy explodes. Ha ha ha.
Very funny.
Yeah. Yes. By the way, I'm not. That's actually how they promoted it.
Okay. Yeah.
Bussy explodes. Yeah.
Maybe their audience thinks that's hilarious. I don't know.
Great. And then Mance Warner versus TBA in a GCW World Title match. So.
I'm sure these surprise mystery opponents will deliver. I think that they are determined to deliver this time around. I think that that's the whole point of this show, right?
Correct.
To fucking deliver because last time they know they didn't. So I'm sure they have tremendous surprises lined up. Nick Gage was hanging around inside their suite at the MSG WWE show, and maybe he'll be one of these surprise guys, and which will obviously get a pop since he hasn't been there in a while, right? They haven't booked him for anything. I don't know that off the top of my head because I don't really pay attention, but I'm sure either way, whether Gage is involved or not, the surprises will deliver at least for their audience. The question is,
Sabu said he's going to be there as well. So now, will he actually show up this time? That is. We'll find out, but Sabu has said that he is returning to GCW at this show.
Not to wrestle though, right? Or is he coming out of his retirement? Or
I don't. I think he's. I don't know what he's doing. I think it's Sabu to appear. I believe PCO.
Yeah, okay.
PCO is also announced as doing something, and Sabu will appear.
Oh yeah, PCO. That's right. Yeah. So but I'm saying the mystery guys will deliver. They're going to try their best to deliver here because they want to have. The question is, are people going to try them again? And I don't think people will. I think anyone who dabbled in it last time who never really had given them a shot before, they've lost the trust of those people. Could this be a show that satisfies their audience? I think it will be. I think that they're going to make sure that this is a great show, or at least a good show this time around. And I'm looking at this, and there's a couple matches that absolutely can go sideways. without a doubt.
I should have mentioned that unification match is a ladder match as well, so that that's going to go sideways. The Maki Ito, Justice, Murdoch, Tremont.
That's going to be just a giant pile of shit. I mean, I don't have any doubt about it. But the rest of this, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it should be fine at minimum.
It looks okay.
I just think
it looks okay. On paper, it looks okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you get a second chance at something like this. You know, the last show was a really important show for them. If that would have been a great show, you know, maybe things are different right now in some way. But it was so bad that I think they ran off a lot of people forever.
Yeah, for sure. So we're trying to get clarification. Someone says that Mance might face the winner of Effie versus Alicatch later in the night, and that's the mystery opponent for the GCW World Title.
Great.
I was kind of hoping it'd be a mystery person and not either Effie or Alicatch doing double duty, but great. Anyway, that is GCW, the People versus GCW this Sunday. Either reviewed on the Flagship next week or done with the Instant Reaction Live. We'll update you guys throughout the weekend on Flagship. Patreon.com. All right, let's go to this brief WWE TNA thing. Announced earlier today, WWE and TNA have entered into a formal agreement to share talent across their shows. I'll read the exact thing here. Formally agreed to a multi-year partnership that will see TNA wrestlers regularly appear on NXT programming and vice versa. Shawn Michaels, the WWE Senior Vice President of Talent and Development Creative, said, "We look forward to growing and evolving our partnership with TNA Wrestling and its outstanding group of athletes by creating new opportunities to further the development of our talent and to elevate the viewer experience at home." So NXT/WWE and TNA formally entered into an agreement to have talent go back and forth between both shows.
So is it just me, or this doesn't mean anything because they were doing it already?
I think it's okay. Here's my thoughts on what's happening here. Is I think, and we all know this, by Royal Rumble time, Jordynne Grace is coming out and beginning her run as a WWE women's roster member, right? Probably, maybe main roster. I would assume main roster. Maybe NXT. I would assume main roster for her, right? She's coming out in the Royal Rumble, and that's the beginning of her, run with the company. I'm certain of it. Everybody's kind of known that for about a year or so. I'm assuming Joe Hendry will also be that. Now I don't know.
I don't know the details of when their contracts are up.
I don't know. But here's my basic theory is that WWE is going to start taking some of TNA's top people, most over people, and start using them a little bit more on their television, or straight up just taking them. And I think this is a way to kind of soften the blow a little bit of, we're taking your top talents, but we're in an agreement right here. You know what I mean? We're in agreement, and we're going to help you, and you're going to help us, and yeah, we're going to take a couple of your guys, but then, we're going to send some of the NXT people to TNA, and we're going to keep helping you guys draw houses and stuff. I think it's a nice, easy way to kind of ease people into WWE stealing some TNA talents and pretty much not giving anything back for it, even though it's a talent agreement or whatever. So I think it's partially that. I think it's partially another thing, like I've mentioned, that WWE admits that the Performance Center does not work and is not a good way to train wrestlers or get wrestlers ready. So now you have another developmental territory here with TNA, where you could send an NXT a wrestler that's maybe not quite, going where you want them to go, or maybe you think they just need a little bit more refinement, and now they can get sent over to TNA and work there for a little bit, and work in front of different crowds and work in front of different people or whatever. So from that standpoint, again, I think it's another admission that the PC isn't the best way to train professional wrestlers. And now, in addition to the ID program, you now also have this TNA thing. So I think it works in twofold that way, where you're trying to soften the blow of, hey, we're going to steal some of your top guys and girls, but don't worry, we're in a relationship, and it's, we're going to share, and you're going to have some people, and we're going to have some, that's what it is. Maybe from an antitrust standpoint too, it's good to do that, to say, hey, whoa, we're not stealing people from other companies. We're in a relationship. It's a talent share there. So there might be a little bit of that. I think there's also the admission that the WPC isn't working. And I also think the third thing is something that we talked about a little bit earlier in the show. It's pretty damn convenient for WWE to get in the mix here and use TNA as a proxy in the culture war of AEW versus WWE, where instead of people arguing about AEW versus WWE, they now argue about AEW versus TNA. And again, it's a little 4D chess. That's a little bit of tinfoil hat stuff, but we know the games that these guys play. We know what they do. And I think there's a little bit of that too of, isn't it better to have this company that we're helping draw houses and we're maybe helping draw ratings and this sort of stuff, so that maybe we can kind of get that conversation happening that, hey, maybe AEW is closer to TNA than they are WWE. Like, it behooves WWE to do that. There's no loss there. And if that's like the fourth or fifth reason why you're doing this, that's not a bad reason to do it. You know, you're doing all the other things that you're going to do, which eventually they're going to bleed TNA dry and let them, you know, wither away and die like they do every other promotional partner they've ever had. We all know that's the end game. If you study wrestling history, you know where this is going. But I think there's also a little bit of, you know, we can leverage TNA even a little bit more in this culture war that we have going on right now, and this social media and media war that we have going on with AEW. And it behooves WWE to say, hey, compare them to TNA. Don't compare them to us. You know, we're our own thing. We're so far ahead of the game that they're closer to TNA than they are us. I think look at what the fucking minions were already tweeting out and talking about hours after the thing got announced, right? It didn't take long before Bully and LaGreca, and that'll be if you're kidding yourself, you don't think that's gonna be the main talking point of Busted Open tomorrow.
No, they already said it would be.
Yeah. So
can TNA be the new number 2?
Right.
That's what they're hyping up for their show tomorrow. LaGreca cut a video from his car acting like it was like this huge fucking bombshell of a story. I think everything you're saying is correct and true. I think that it benefits them from an antitrust standpoint. I think it benefits them, obviously, from a business standpoint, where they can pluck away the talent they like from TNA and really offer very little in return in ways of talent. They've given them scraps, bottom of the barrel NXT people that have no name value, that they don't care about, that the fans don't care about. And I think the most interesting point that you made was that, yes, this is a quiet admission that the PC, in terms of training street free agents, quote unquote street free agents, NIL free agents, it's been over a decade and it just isn't working very well. So the WWE ID program and, you know, continuing to rub elbows with TNA gives them the inside track on actual pro wrestlers that know what they're doing, who are going to be easier to develop into what they want out of their sports entertainers than it is to bring in some ex-college football player who knows nothing about wrestling and may not pick it up properly because they're wasting a lot of money and resources doing that. Whereas you bring in Marcus Mathers, or you bring in Jack Cartwheel, or you bring in Jordan Grace, or you bring in the fucking say his name guy, and they're ready made for you. You just have to craft them the way you want them on your product. It's more efficient, and it's easier to get those people ready for your TV than track star who just graduated from LSU, who it's a dice roll whether it's going to work out or not. You might get Bianca Belair, but then you're going to get 10 other people who flame out and never even make it to TV. So I think that's the most interesting point you made, and the one that is most correct. They know that the idea of the PC and just creating people from scratch has not worked. We have a decade of evidence that it doesn't work. And yeah, there's dopey people who will point to the half a dozen examples, your Bianca Belairs and your 2 or 3 other people, where it did work. But let's face it, there's dozens upon dozens, if not hundreds, that didn't. That either were let go immediately or let go without ever getting on TV, because it's hard. You want people who love this because it's easier, people who are doing it already, who already love it, who have the drive and the passion for it. And that's what the ID program and the TNA partnership gives you. With all of that said, and all of those great points that you made, and I agree with every single one of them, okay? And yes, it's going to be a one-sided relationship. We all know that. With all of that said, what I'm saying is today's press release and announcement was a big old nothing. What does it mean? This was already in existence. They were already had this
formal agreement. They formally agree to
it's
share
a
talent.
nothing press release. It means nothing.
Right.
There's nothing in that press release that wasn't already happening. It's all PR bullshit. It's PR bullshit that we got. And people like LaGreca fall for it. I know we're really burying Busted Open today, but I mean, acting like this is some bombshell announcement. Dave, it was already in practice. There's nothing new here. There's nothing new. It's a press release. It's a PR press release, and you're falling for it. And that goes for anyone else who thinks this is some kind of big deal. I read this press release and I'm like, okay, we've already been doing this.
Right.
What's new here? There's no new information.
Formal agreement.
Now, there happens to be a TNA pay-per-view coming up that have big old NXT letters on it now. So, they're helping promote that and get a little buzz up for that. And like you're saying, all the other reasons why you'd want to do a formal announcement of this partnership. But there's no new information here. There's nothing new to this. This is a big old fucking nothing. If you have two brain cells to scrape together, this announcement was nothing. They're not telling us anything that we didn't know already. So that's all I'm saying. Everything you're saying is accurate, and I agree with every point you made. But this press release, it's a nothing. Is there anything in that press release you didn't know?
Oh, no.
Is there anything in that press release we didn't know was happening?
No.
It was all happening already.
But it's formally.
Triple H puts out his little tweet.
Formally agreed. Yeah, there's tweets.
Oh, this groundbreaking agreement. The agreement was already in place, buddy. We already, So it hasn't been a secret. We all know you're sending the literal bottom of the barrel
Brindley
talent over
Reese. Yeah, you're getting Brindley Reese and yeah, you get the back and forth for a lot of them has been your Dante Chens and your Izzy Dames and your Brindley Reeses and that's
nothings.
Yeah.
It's not a but look, WWE has the high ground. We talk about this all the time. In these arrangements, the high ground calls all the shots, and the high ground eventually ends up with the talent they want to end up with. That's what we've seen with AEW and New Japan. That's what we've seen with New Japan and other Pearl promotions over the years, most notably DDT. So that's just the way these things go. No matter what level of pro wrestling you're talking about, whether it's all the way at the top, whether it's, whenever these arrangements are always one-sided in some way. They're very rarely an even exchange. It's just not the nature of it. And usually the promotion with like in TNA's position fully understands that. And it's like, okay, well, we're going to lose Jordan Grace to them with or without, so why not just, why not the devil
ball? Yeah, why not play ball? Yeah.
Why not the devil and then at least we get something out of it, right? We get, they're not going to give us the talent we want in these exchanges. They're not going to give us big drawing stars or anything like that. But and TNA believes, and their fans believe, and the people who cover TNA believe that this really is helping TNA business, this arrangement. I'm a little more dubious to that. I did have Mike Gilbert on a Flagship Plus, a show that's getting very good reviews, where he came on and spoke about TNA and sort of their contract season stuff. And I gave him the question because he follows it closer than we do. I said, do you think this arrangement is part of the reason or the primary reason why TNA's house show business has been up? And he believes it is the reason. And it's the primary reason. So, I'm a little more dubious to that. It's a lot of anecdotal stuff like, well, there's a lot of fans there in WWE t-shirts. And and I can't, here's the thing though. I can't explain otherwise why their business is up.
I think everything kind of worked at the exact same time, where you have Joe Hendry, who was getting hot at the exact time that WWE was spotlighting Joe Hendry, and the return of the Hardy Boys, I think, is something that a lot of people should probably give a lot of credit to.
The Hardy Boys is absolutely a factor, and to be fair, Mike Gilbert did note that.
Right. I think those plus I'm sure that a little bit of getting the thumbs up and the stamp of approval from WWE to their fans to say, hey, you can watch this TNA show. It's not garbage wrestling. Go watch. I think that probably helps a couple fans move in the building. And I think Joe Hendry getting popular at the same time that WWE is promoting him, plus the Hardy Boys, all kind of works out to create what this currently was with TNA, which again was a very good year at in terms of drawing, but not necessarily this like. The idea that they're competing for number 2 in America is just, again, it's completely laughable. But
no, that's complete nonsense. But yeah, his theory was also, it's like, all right, well, if TNA has the WWE endorsement, then the WWE fans who we know are very territorial are like, oh, okay, it's okay to go.
Right.
To a TNA
it's not garbage indie wrestling. It's not a fucking outlaw mud show. It's not. It's not bullshit. They approve of it. Triple H said it's good, so now I can watch it.
That's right.
Right.
And that from that aspect, like it's look, the geeks that they're sending there are making zero difference. But Jordan Grace and Joe Hendry being on NXT make them bigger stars in the TNA universe.
Right. But
right? So
just like All American Wrestling all the many years ago, that it's a short-term gain, and then eventually WWF's going to take Junkyard Dog and say, okay, yeah. No, you can go back to Mid-South and he'll be a bigger star when he goes to, the Super, and then eventually we're just going to take Junkyard Dog, and now he's a star on our network.
But back then, the territory promoters didn't think that was. I think TNA is well aware.
Oh, they should. I think they know the score at this point. Yeah, the territory promoters thought Vince Jr. was doing them a solid, and then he was fucking killing them all. Whereas, today I would hope to God that TNA knows that they're chum here, and that they just have to play ball like they know. Because they're going to
take who they want anyway. So let's get something out of it before they take them.
Right.
So that's kind of. This press release told us nothing new. And I just don't understand people acting like it's some groundbreaking thing. Like we were already in the midst of it. We were already doing it. It was happening. It's been happening for months.
Well, there you go. So it's formally agreed upon now, Joe. So get into it. All right, let's get to some other topics here. Let's do MLW. Let's do MLW here real quick. Kings of Colosseum, their latest YouTube special, available for free on YouTube. Big news out of MLW Kings of Colosseum.
Oh, really?
Matt Riddle is your new MLW World Heavyweight Champion. Finally.
Oh.
After not actual real news. After months and months and months of us saying, well, clearly Kojima, there's got to be the end of the road for Kojima. It was finally the end of the road for Kojima.
I thought the big news was going to be their super no vacancy full house of 2,400 fans. I thought that was the big news, which they announced themselves on their Twitter. So to catch people up here, MLW announces a super no vacancy full house, total sellout of 2,400 fans. The NYTEX Sports Center in North Richland Hills, Texas, if you look it up, Rich, has a total capacity of 2,400, right? So
they sold that bitch out.
You'd be tempted to say that's right, pat him on the back and say, good job. Now, we have a listener who we won't name. He deleted his post in our Discord. I think he has a real world job where he doesn't want to be connected to this pro wrestling nonsense.
Do not blame him. Yeah.
So he's like, well, what are they talking about? I'm at the show. He provided a picture. Nice crowd, but definitely not 2,400 fans. Maybe a couple hundred. Look, let's be generous and say 1,000. I don't even think there's 1,000 there.
I don't think it was 1,000. I think it was like...
No, but it was a nice crowd.
It was a good crowd.
600-700 people, maybe.
Yeah, somewhere in the
500,
600. I'd say somewhere in that range. 500, 600, 700 maybe.
And he also noted there's also a hockey game going on in this place. I'm paraphrasing. So basically, this building, we've all seen this. I think that where they've got an event going on in half of the building, a giant fucking curtain or removable wall, and then the wrestling on the other side of the building. So if there's a hockey game happening, and I'm told it was a rec league hockey game. I did some journalism, Rich. So there's a rec league hockey game happening in a full-size hockey rink on one side of the arena, in a building that's total capacity is 2,400 fans. How can you have then 2,400 fans on your half of the arena that is designated for your wrestling event? The answer is you can't. Okay. So this is MLW once again playing their attendance games where they just claim this is what they do. They run a building. They claim it's sold out. They've been doing this for years. It doesn't matter where they run. It doesn't matter how many people are there. When they would run...
Joe, they're on a streak of 9... it's like 15 straight shows that they've sold out. I don't know what you're talking about.
At least.
Yeah.
At least. When they'd have shows in Philly and they would claim in, The Observer and PW Insider would say that MLW was calling it a sellout or whatever, I would have friends who would go to these shows from New Jersey, show up because they're coming straight from work. They'd show up in by the second match or whatever, and walk right in and buy a fucking ticket and with room to spare. None of these shows are ever sold out. And it's always been this way with MLW. They announce attendance in some of these buildings like the Melrose where people know that you can't put that many people that they're claiming are in the building. This situation, where the total capacity of the building is 2,400, and there's a fucking hockey game happening in half of the building, and then they're still claiming that they filled it with all 2,400. It's comical at this point. It's just it's flat out comical.
It's part of Vince McMahon used to say remember when it was discussed on the media calls about attendances, and you'd still have WWE fans argue about this, even though, what are you doing? Vince McMahon would say, these attendance numbers are part of the entertainment of the sports entertainment business. So he would say, we announced 78,000, but that's part of the entertainment of the show. But in actuality, there was 52,000 people there or whatever. And yet WWE fans will still say, no, there was 70,000.
They'll still argue and say it's legit.
No, he said on a media call with the shareholders, we lie about the numbers because that's part of the show, but the real number is this, and you'd still have people argue. But yes, so this is all part of the entertainment part of MLW, right?
Yeah, but they're not a publicly traded company, and they're not required by law to not lie about the business they're doing.
All right, you bring up a good point.
Because Vince never did that either until he had to.
Yeah, okay, you bring up an interesting point. Okay.
So someone else here, are you familiar with Gerard from bodyslam.net?
Yes.
A big TNA guy, covers TNA, covers some other stuff. Says that they claim that they put 2,000 in Cicero Stadium, and you've been to shows in Cicero.
Oh, yeah. No, I know exactly what the story is, but please tell.
So he was there in that building in June for TNA Against All Odds, and it was packed, right?
Mm-hmm.
People getting turned away by the fire marshal, packed.
Yes, can confirm.
And it was 1,200 people in the building. But MLW claims they get 2,000 in the building.
Yeah, there's no way.
But the fire marshal was turning people away from the TNA show, and TNA's attendance was 1,200. And that included all the bleachers and the standing areas. Fire marshal, ECW arena style, saying you cannot sell any more tickets. And there was about 1,200 people there. But when Court Bauer and the boys run Cicero, they're telling you there's 2,000 people in the building. It's every building they run in every city they run where they play this game. And, of course, we had the mutants at Reddit disputing. MLW attendance defenders are a thing that exists.
Yeah, I didn't know that I didn't know. Who knew until this week that there were those people?
That MLW attendance defenders were things that exist. And the voices of wrestling are liars. Rich, we didn't even have anything to do with this.
I have nothing to do with it. Leave me alone.
We had nothing to do with this. We didn't say that there wasn't 2,400 people there. We didn't say that there was a hockey game.
Our Discord, which is run by Rover, did though. That was the best part of it. I am Rover.
So apparently, Trevor, the Irish wrestling fan, runs the Voices of Wrestling Discord, and the other goons from the Something Awful forum are the people who run our Discord. And we are not to be trusted. Again, we had nothing to do with this. This was a person who literally went to the show and literally saw the hockey game happening. This person who, by the way, again, I don't think they want to be named. Just for a little background, this person is a real world reporter. They work in media. Okay? This isn't some Reddit goon. This isn't some dumb wrestling fan who, breathes with their mouth open. This is a smart guy who likes wrestling, who just went to a wrestling show and said, what are they talking about? There's a hockey game in the other half of the place. This is nonsense. So no, there were not 2,400 people there. And why do MLW attendance defenders exist? Are these MLW attendance defenders, or are they just Voice of Wrestling haters? Is that what it is?
I was going to say probably the latter. Probably the latter.
Yeah, probably the.
I can't imagine anyone's cracking their knuckles, being like, "Hold on a minute, how dare you? The sanctity of MLW attendance figures. Hold on, I gotta defend. I'm a real renegade. I must defend MLW against these.
To be fair, we are told the Reddit user who thinks that our Discord is run by the Something Awful goons and Trevor the Irish wrestling fan. We are told that his comments were deleted and he was thrown out of the thread. So okay, so that misinformation that was being spread was shut down by the Reddit moderators. It was too over the top, even for Reddit. So there is that. I will say this about the MLW Kings of Colosseum, which definitely wasn't in front of a packed house of 2,400 people.
A lot of dark on those house lights. A lot of dark on the house lights.
Listen, I'm gonna give them 1,000. I know you don't want to do it.
I don't think there was 1,000 people there, but we'll do it. We'll round up. We'll round up to 1,000. It's fine. We'll let them have it.
I don't think there were 1,000 people there. I think there were probably 700 a fair number based on the photos.
I would probably go closer to 6, but I'll give you 7. What's 100 people? Fine, 700. Let's go with it.
Let me look at the photo again here. Now the bleachers are full. The
Right.
seats on the floor are not full.
There's not 700
empty
people
seats.
on that show. You could sit there and count 700 people if you want. No
And
way.
the other half, there's no one because then that's the wall and then the hockey game on the other side.
Ain't no 700 people there.
Where's my correspondent here? Let me see, just so I get all this right. Yeah, it was a rec league game. The building was split in two. So like one side was MLW, and then you walk past the concessions and go through some doors, and there's the hockey game. So there's no fucking way. Half the building was hockey. That's 1,200 of the seats that are
so good.
So there was hardly now the person notes there's hardly any people at the hockey game because it was like a rec league game. You know what I mean? But the total building capacity is 2,400. Oh man! All right,
I love it. That reminds me, I went to an ROH show once at the Windy City Fieldhouse in Chicago. So they'd always usually run the Frontier Fieldhouse, and they decided this time to run the Windy City Fieldhouse, which is actually in the city itself, as opposed to suburban Chicago, where the Frontier Fieldhouse was in Chicago Ridge. And so the day they did the show, there was a soccer game going on, a football game going on, but there was a curtain between the two, but just like not a wall, like a curtain. The problem was, though, as the wrestling show goes on, and I'm sure you can hear this on the DVD or whatever, I forget exactly what the show is, there's whistles, and so the ball's hitting the screen and hitting fans in the back of the head or whatever. It's just like, so these guys are wrestling this match, all of a sudden you're like, like, it was just a disaster.
There's a building...
It led to a Frontier Fieldhouse chant later in the show where people said, Frontier Field, please go back to the Frontier Fieldhouse. And they never ran the Windy City Fieldhouse ever again and went back to the Frontier Fieldhouse.
There's a building in the Philly area, and I don't remember what side of the river it's on, whether it's in Trenton or Philly, but it's in like that. The Flyers skate zone. I think Evolve may have run there.
I remember that venue. Yeah, I remember that venue for sure.
Same deal. I think that gets split where it's like a wrestling show in half the building and then whatever the fuck. Some kid's birthday party in the other half or whatever. All right, so the photo you saw, and then we'll get off of this. The photo you saw, they said, all right, now there are some rows set up opposite the bleachers on the other side, but they estimate maybe another 100. So there's not bleachers on that opposite side, just a couple of rows of chairs that are not pictured. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then like the removable wall to the hockey game. So what you're seeing is basically what's there plus 100. 2,400. Oh, man.
Promoters promote, man. Promoters promote. I love it.
They do. You got to make it feel like a hot product. Now, I will say this about the Kings of Colosseum. This blew away One Shot. Much better show. One Shot is the worst MLW show I've seen in the last 2 years or so.
Yeah. Of course,
really
the one
bad.
with Eric Bischoff's name plastered all over it would be the worst one, but it actually was terrible. It's not. We're not doing like
terrible.
Eric Bischoff propaganda stuff. It was a fucking horrible show.
No, I mean, just look on Cage Match where MLW shows usually get like a 5, right? Here you go. I mean, here you go. Starting with Pit Fighters. So now let's go back a little further. If you go to the start of 2024, okay, 5, 5.88, 5, 6.5, 5.5, 6.5, 5.5, 6.3, 5.9. You get the idea. 6, 6, 5.9, 5, 6, 4.6, 5.7. Pit Fighters was bad, 3.8. 5.8, 4.8, 5.9, 5.5. And now Eric Bischoff's One Shot, 2.68. It was a horrible show.
Yeah, it was a bad show.
Okay. It is a horrible show. And, so this isn't us doing anti-Eric propaganda. But this show I thought was a much better show. It's a 6.38. So it's actually the highest score for an MLW show in close to a year. And I think that's fair. I thought the Eric Bischoff segment was terrible. Did you see his promo?
I did, yeah.
Oh my God. So he takes that envelope at the end of One Shot, the mystery envelope. They left us with a cliffhanger. So, of course, he's doing his whole Twitter shtick as part of his character in MLW. All the dirt sheets and fake
so
reporters.
Yeah, he's
buzzing.
backstage. He's backstage. Clear. They I don't know where they claimed he was. Oh, they said he was via satellite, but he was very clearly backstage at Eric Bischoff's one shot. Recorded a month ago, and he goes, "Oh, the wrestling world is wondering what's in the envelope. The dirt sheets can't stop talking about what's in the envelope, but they don't know anything because dirt sheets don't know anything. They're just about." And you're like, and he goes on this 2-minute rant about dirt sheets that has nothing to do with
all
the point.
Fake journalists and dirt sheet writers are buzzing.
By the way,
and making things up as usual.
Nobody we didn't even bother to come up with any sort of idea of what this envelope was. Nobody has. Zero of the quote unquote dirt sheet writers has spent a second wondering what was in the envelope that Eric Bischoff had.
If we didn't talk about MLW,
nobody did.
Okay, we are the only people that talk about him. Now, I like MLW.
I do too.
I like these shows exactly to what those ratings were. They're 5s and 6s to me.
Yep.
I don't mind
what I love most about MLW is it is 90 minutes to 2 hours in and out every single time.
Yeah. And if I didn't like them, I wouldn't watch them and we wouldn't review them. But nobody is talking about this angle, this envelope.
All the dirt sheets and all the liars and miscreants of the internet wrestling community are wondering what's in the envelope, Eric, and they don't know anything because they just make up lies.
They're all wrong. I can tell you that right now. Eric, no one is talking about this.
What are you talking about?
If I texted Sean Ross Sapp right now and asked him what he thinks is in Eric Bischoff's envelope, he would probably send back a question.
What envelope? What the fuck are you talking about? Yeah.
If we sent an email to Dave Meltzer and said, "Hey Dave, you got any speculation on the Eric Bischoff envelope?" He would have no fucking idea what envelope. What was he talking trash about? No one knows. No one talks about it. No one's even aware of the angle. Very try hard, very bad. But not as bad as the Cesar Duran, Selena De La Renta stuff that was on the show. That was even worse.
Oh, we have to be done with these. We can't keep doing these. Why do these exist?
I don't even look. I have to be honest.
They've all been filmed in the same place too. Because Selena is still pregnant, by the way, in all the ones that they're filming. Because she's always behind a desk. Do you notice that? She's always. So they clearly, whenever they last had Selena, which was probably in October or June or whatever, they filmed all of these vignettes. Yeah. So for people that have followed the story for some fucking reason, so Selena De La Renta is Cesar Duran's. It's Cesar Duran, right? Because we always call him Dario Cueto, but he is Cesar Duran in the MLW world.
Yes.
She reveals that or Cesar reveals I am your father, and Selena goes, "Oh my God!" And then she's pregnant, and it's with one of his goons. And then at the Lucha show I went to, she had the baby or whatever. But then Cesar got kidnapped one time, but then he got found. And now this last time her goon boyfriend got kidnapped. Or he's missing or whatever. And Cesar is like, you have to move on. You have to move on. It's not that big.
Right.
She's like,
he's probably dead. Don't worry.
She tries to add. Doesn't she try to be a real actress? Because I understand why she's probably available for MLW a lot because she's not very good at acting. Right. But she's like, but father, he's the father of my child. And he's like, Selena, you must move on. You must not worry about such trivial things. And it's like what's happening? Because he's ready to move on. He's like, look, they come and they go. It's whatever. Move forward. Don't worry about you. I know you just had this kid a month ago, and the father of this child is just missing, presumed dead. Just move on, Selena. Don't fret over it. It's fine. Just move on.
Sometimes I feed people to my monster Matanza. It just is what it is. Right. Sometimes they're just dead. It's no big deal, and we can all move on from this. But who was the guy behind the bars in the mask? What was that? Did you even understand what was going on?
No idea what's going on. No.
I don't even understand it
and
anymore.
I've watched every single one of these segments, and I feel like every time I watch them, I've missed something, and then I realize, no, I haven't.
Do you ever do that thing where you start to rewind them and then you're like, I don't care enough. Let me move on to this Del Miexo match because I can't try to understand this.
I can't spend too much time trying to figure out what the fuck Dario Cueto and what the fuck they're trying to figure out here. So eventually Dario, Cesar Duran is at he's at a computer and he reads some message or something like, or what was it? Was it a voicemail or a message? I don't even remember now. He read some note or something, and he was just like, "Oh, you'll have to pay for what you did." And Selena's like, "What? What, father? What did you do?" And Cesar just stares longingly into that. I'm like, "What is? Who cares?"
Then it ends.
Fuck.
And
who cares?
And listen, all the dirt sheets are buzzing.
They're buzzing. What did Cesar do?
Cesar was talking about
to get the goon, the guy, whatever his name. They named what he was. They named him that long ago, and I don't remember what his name is. It doesn't.
All
matter.
the fake reporters and journalists are buzzing.
The dirt sheets are talking about it.
So we have this nonsense happening in its own little corner of MLW. We have Eric Bischoff's nonsense happening in the other corner of MLW. We have Mr. Saint Laurent and his bullshit happening in his corner.
Hey, I like the World Titan Federation stuff. That's good.
None of these worlds ever intersect.
No.
And it's just like, it's not good. It's not good. But the show, this wasn't bad. I really thought the Lucha matches carried things. I really enjoyed Atlantis and Atlantis Jr. versus Blue Panther and Dark Panther.
That was a great match. That was really, really good stuff.
I thought the old guys...
Joe, I have to take care of something for 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
All right. I thought the old guys in that match did all of their stuff that they can do in their sleep, and then they got out of the way, and they let Atlantis and Dark Panther carry the rest of it. And it was a shit ton of fun. And, it's not like a notebook match or anything like that, but exactly what you want out of the father-son tag team lucha match. And then later on in the show, they did Averno, Esfinge, and Mascara Dorada in the three-way, and Averno ended up winning that, but he got the pin on Esfinge. Obviously, he was there to take the fall, and they kept Dorada out of the fall. That was probably the best match on the show. I would say that it was, because I thought it was better than Riddle and Kojima. Riddle and Kojima was exactly what you would expect out of 50-year-old MLW level effort Satoshi Kojima, which is as little effort as he can get away with while not being completely terrible, and post WWE Riddle, if that makes any sense. If you've seen post WWE Riddle, if you understand Kojima's MLW level of effort, their match, the title change, they finally did it, was exactly what you would landed right where you thought it would. It was like a 3-star match or something. So I thought those were the 3 best matches on the show, unless you were super into the ladder match with all the guys and the gravity gamble gimmick, which was fine for what it was, but I'm just over that kind of thing. And, there really wasn't much else to sink your teeth into on the show. Del Miexo, as expected, beats Janai Kai. So she wins the world featherweight, the women's, they call it the featherweight title, the women's title. She avoids the haircut. It's a Del Miexo match, so there's obviously a limit. It wasn't very good. Donovan Dijak versus Kenta. It's post WWE Dijak, where it's like he's just not the same guy anymore. I thought Kenta looked fine. Dijak wins. He's the regular. He should have won. Kenta's the part-timer. So, and that was basically the show. The Gravity Gamble match, I guess Rich can jump in when he comes back, but they did a lot of story stuff with it with Brett Ryan Gosselin. He thought he had but the briefcase he pulled down ended up being empty, so he got fucked. Matthew Justice pulled down a briefcase and it ended up being a barbed wire gimmick, so he was happy about that because he's all Mr. Plunder and he was happy about the barbed wire. But it ended up being Mads Krugar who climbed up and got, the good briefcase in that match. So I don't know whether Rich is back or not.
I'm back. Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, yeah. So I basically went over my thoughts on the entire card.
Okay. I can give quick, pithy thoughts about it. I thought Riddle and Kojima, I don't know what, obviously I don't know what you thought of it, but I thought it started off very slow and I was like, this is going to be very good. But then I think the last half of the match was really good. I actually ended up liking it a lot. What was your thought on Riddle versus Kojima? I thought the effort in the last half was really good.
I described it as 50-year-old MLW effort Kojima versus post WWE Matt Riddle. Exactly what you think that would be. I don't know, like 3 stars or something.
Yeah. Oh, no. But if you watch this match, you might, at the beginning of it, you're like, oh, this is going to be really, really bad. But I thought they put it together towards the end. I thought Riddle worked his ass off to try to get the most out of Kojima. And Kojima's going to work, whatever effort he's going to work in MLW. But the Gravity Gamble match was okay. I actually liked it more than I thought I was going to like it.
That's the one I talked about the least. So if you want to go into detail
well, no, I don't want. I mean, it was a multi-man ladder match. So of course I'm not going to give it too much praise. But I would say I go in with like the most arms crossed possible for any multi-man ladder match at this point because I'm just so over them. But I thought everybody worked their ass off to try to make as much out of this as good. And should be noted here that Kevin Knight came out, was attacked, and then didn't get into the match, and Mr. Thomas replaced him, which I think is a little interesting given that Kevin Knight is a free agent, and I don't know where his next move is, but so
are you suggesting they wrote him off?
I'm led to believe that yes, because he got attacked and was brought to a local medical facility afterwards. So I believe that either he was wrote off or Kevin Knight said, "Hey, I might be getting a job with somebody else, so I don't really want to do this fucking ladder match." So
I don't want to be falling off ladders.
Yeah, I don't need to be falling off ladders if someone's coming to call this week, especially for MLW. So Mr. Thomas, you can take my spot. If you'd like. So Mr. Thomas did take a spot and did some big bumps. It did some good work in that. But Atlantis and Lance Jr. and Blue Panther, Dark Panther was probably the best match of the entire night for me. And the rest of it was okay. I mean, Del Miexo and Janai Kai was pretty terrible, but Del Miexo was awful. And Dijak versus Kenta was about as good as a Dijak versus Kenta match is going to be in 2025. Like Kenta, decent amount of effort. Dijak,
Dijak's just not that guy anymore.
He just sucks. He stinks.
Yeah, Yeah, I agree. He's just not that guy anymore.
And then the Lucha three-way was solid as hell. I like the Lucha three-way.
Yeah, I thought the Lucha matches were the 2 best matches on the show.
As always. So, as always, the MLW, I agreed, yes.
Well, yeah, most of the time.
Not always. I guess not always,
yeah.
but most of the time.
All right, so on the 23rd, which I guess is next weekend. No, next Thursday. They're giving us the rest of what was taped. So we've got Alejandra Quintanilla versus Persephone. Bobby Fish versus Ariel Dominguez, Virus versus Neon. I'm really looking forward to that. Paul London and Paul Walter Hauser versus the Andersons. Minoru Suzuki versus Filthy Tom. And Mystico defends against Barbero Cavanario. So that looks like it could be pretty decent too if the Mystico match delivers, and it will to a certain level. Look, all the Mystico matches in MLW deliver to a certain level. They just rarely get to like great territory. Virus Neon could be interesting, and a lot of this other stuff looks like very story heavy. So, the Andersons had another segment this week. So, to set up that match, and so we'll circle back in another week or so. It'll be going on as we're doing the show, I guess. So,
yeah.
That's the world of MLW.
MLW. Oh, I should note that what was the segment where Alex Kane came out? It was like they had a bunch of guys getting in the ring and Alex Kane like ran him off. And
shit. What happened with that? That was because he's fired. Because Bischoff fired him.
Right, but he just came out and he was just there. So.
Well, yeah, because he's doing the thing that all fired wrestlers do, where they keep like showing up unexpected, So that was just another. I don't remember the specifics.
I forget. Yeah, but just thought I'd point that out.
My phone's dead, which is where my notes are.
Yeah, but if people are thinking, "Oh my God, Alex Kane's off the show," the show's going to get. He's not technically off the show. He's still technically on the show. So
no, it's Bischoff quote unquote fired him. It's an angle.
Right.
Yeah.
So that is MLW available to watch for free on their YouTube. So all renegades head on over to YouTube and watch MLW Kings of Colosseum. And then, all right, we have New Japan and the FSM 50. Where do you want to go? Let's do New Japan. Okay, New Japan Battle in the Valley, San Jose Civic Center. 1664 in the San Jose Civic Center for New Japan Battle in the Valley. Yeah, that's
way down.
Yeah, because do you have the number in front of you, what they did Battle in the Valley 2024? I can get it real quick if you need. Let me see. 2147. 2147 in 2024. And
same number the year before.
2155 the year before. Yeah, that was the money year.
So they sold it out 2 years in a row, and this year they didn't even come close to selling it out. So they were way down. I thought it was a pretty good show. I thought it was actually a really good show. I loved Gabe Kidd and Tomohiro Ishii. And I loved, well, I shouldn't say loved. I liked Zack Sabre Jr. and Hechicero a lot. So those two matches were the two best matches. I think I'm done with Sabre and Hechicero now, though, because I've seen everything that they can do.
Yeah, I thought this one was when it was done. I was like, "That's good," but I'm good. You know what I mean? We've seen the best of them. We've seen the middle ground. We've seen. Yeah, I'm good. I am.
They're done now. It's fine. I mean, their series is over. That's
is it? Because Hetch doesn't think it's over. Because after that match, Hetch is like, "One more chance. Give me one more. Give me the title shot."
Yeah.
And Zach's like, "All right. It's like, no, I beat you. I won in a non-title match. Why would I give you a title shot?" But Hetch after the match is like, "You, me, one more title." It's like, no, you don't deserve the title.
Look,
man.
it's beautiful wrestling. It really is beautiful wrestling with these two guys. But this is like the third match, right? Like, what I've seen everything that they're capable of now. I'd rather see these two guys in there with someone else now. That's all. I'm not saying I didn't like it. I liked it a lot. But they had a match in Arena Mexico. They had a match in Rev Pro. And now they've had a match in Rev Pro, right? On the anniversary.
Yeah, of course.
They did the Arena Mexico Lucha 2 out of 3 falls. They did the match at the Rev Pro anniversary, and now they did a match on a New Japan show in America. I mean, can you squeeze a fourth one out of this?
They had a PWG match
Japan?
many years ago too. 2018, they had a PWG match too.
Yeah, but I'm not counting that.
Yeah,
one.
right.
That ain't part of this.
As far as this series, it's been CMLL. The tag match in New Japan, the Rev Pro match, and now this one. So they're good.
Yeah, and they did a tag too. I think they did.
Yeah,
a tag.
it was Bad Dude Tito and Sabre versus Hetch and Virus.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. So it's like also in San Jose, I believe, but not in this building. So it was at Garrett Gonzalez's high school, right? That was the show.
Right.
So
Mount Pleasant, Mount Pleasant High School. Yep.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like we've seen this now, right? And the thing is, as long as Zach is the IWGP champ, he can't lose. So that's the other thing that hurts it. So I don't know. It was good though. And then, so those two matches were the two best matches, I thought. And then I thought there were a bunch of matches that were good too. I thought Phantasmo and Cobb with the creative double count out finish was a fun, entertaining match. I thought Takeshita and Kushida going after each other's body parts. Kushida trying to work the arm, and Takeshita, working on. And then Takeshita, obviously, he wasn't going to lose, but they didn't overstay their welcome, and I thought they had a good match.
That was a really smart worked match. That was like a very professional wrestled match.
Very
you know what I mean?
yes,
like it was like very ground based, very technical, very limb based, and wasn't a bunch
attacking
of bombs.
Body parts.
Yeah. It was just like attacking a body part, very deliberate, not slow, but very deliberate about everything they did. And then it just ended. You know what I mean? The Takeshita just beat him. He's just better than him, and they didn't exchange a bunch of kickouts. They didn't do a bunch of things like that. It was just, Kushida tried to, basically. His story was, I'm not going to be able to throw bombs with this guy, so I'm going to stay on the ground and try to, work a body part and do all those sort of things. And when it was done, the best way to describe it, like I said, it was a very professional wrestling match for sure out of Kushida and Takeshita. Not spectacular, but a good match, a solid match for sure.
And Despy and Ishimori for a match that I had no interest in watching at all, and I had arms folded, gritted teeth. I liked it. It was fine. So even a match I didn't want to like, I thought was pretty good. So, the rest of the show, the world-class wrecking crew over Roppongi Revice, I thought that was just a 2.5-star nothing match. I didn't really care. It was fine. It was like nothing wrong with it, but
it was inoffensive. But yeah, I'm good.
I just don't care about the West Coast wrecking crew or Yo. That's the problem.
Right.
There's 4 people in the match, and 3 of them could retire tomorrow, and I wouldn't even notice. I just have no interest in watching any of those people wrestle. So that you're working an uphill battle right off the bat, and then it was just a professional wrestling match worked by professionals. There's just nothing else to add. The women's elimination match, I don't know. I don't want to. People get mad at me. You talk about it.
I skipped it. So.
Oh, you skipped?
I skipped it. Yeah, I was pressed for time on the show, and I looked at it and I said, I think I'm good. I looked at the reviews and I was like, I think I'm all right on this one. So,
yeah,
I don't.
All right,
doesn't look like I missed much. So if I did, feel free to let me know. But does not seem like
it was the worst match on the show.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't. The worst match on the show was the Sumi Sakai retirement. but I don't count that because it wasn't meant to be a match.
That was
It
a
was
segment.
thing.
Yeah, that was a segment. That wasn't really a professional
They're just
wrestling
having
match.
fun.
Yeah.
Right. They're having fun out there. And the match itself was, I'm like, come on, let's get this over with. And the post-match stuff, though, was really good. So...
Yeah, it was a cool moment. Yeah, so the match, if you didn't see, it was Evil and Show teaming with Sumi Sakai, and we talked about that before. Sumi Sakai, the reason she's teaming with House of Torture, she helped those guys and housed them and stuff, especially Evil when he was in Texas and whatnot. So that worked out. Or was it New Jersey or New Jersey? Right? She housed them when they were in New Jersey.
Sumi Sakai lives in New Jersey, and
right.
That's where she housed Evil and Show. And if you noticed in the post-match stuff, she really took a moment with Yo.
Yes.
But and he undoubtedly would have been in this match if the kayfabe didn't work.
Right,
out,
the kayfabe
she was
didn't work.
teaming with the House of Torture guys.
When they were the Tempura Boys, and no, I did not make that up. That was their name in Ring of Honor, the Tempura Boys. Yes. Versus Hiromu Takahashi, Mayu Iwatani, and Yuka Sakazaki. So you had a cool thing here. You had a Stardom wrestler, a Tokyo Joshi Pro wrestler, intergender, a bunch of stuff just all thrown together. And essentially, it was just a big long segment. Like she would do spots, but yeah, it was goofy and whatnot. So the match itself was whatever, but I thought the post match was really cool, and everybody outpouring of support from the crowd. Like she eventually gets pinned. She's, loses, looking at, ends her career looking up at the lights. House of Torture go, leave her to die because they're assholes, you know what I mean? And Hiromu Mayu and Yuka Sakazaki finish her off. And then after the match, the whole locker room empties out and everybody, cheers for her and stomps the ring and stuff. So it was a cool moment for her.
Yeah, they all hit their finishes, right?
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
I assume those are the ladies' finishes that they hit the moonsault off the top, and then Hiromu hit his finish. And like you said, the House of Torture guys were like, all right, this match is lost. And they just didn't even bother trying. They just left.
Yeah,
like,
they just said, they hockey talked her and said, the hell with this.
Yeah, like, fuck this. But they came back out for the ceremony.
Of course, yeah.
Or did they? I'm not sure.
Actually, I don't know if they did, but Evil's teasing something that House of Torture might be done or something going on with Evil.
Or
so who knows?
Is leaving
or
New
he's
Japan
done.
or something. So, obviously he's not. But actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if they were out there for the ceremony.
I don't remember seeing that, but maybe I didn't get a look at everybody that was out there. But I guess I would have noticed them. I would have noticed Evil, but I don't think I saw him.
All the women on the card came out. I think she had a hand in training a lot of them. And they were bowing to her. They all took the pictures. Jeff Cobb came out. Everybody was out of kayfabe. Haste was out there. She hugged everybody. That was cool. Yeah, so I don't really count that. But it was a really good show top to bottom, especially by strong standards where sometimes they're not, but this was all right. So we'll see what's going on with that House of Torture angle. Now the New Beginning Osaka show is coming up on February 11th. And now the show is in full. It's Tanahashi versus Makabe. Did we talk about this last week?
We did preview the show last week. Yeah, but it's full. So hey, go for it. Why not?
Shingo and Drilla Maloney as Drilla Maloney moves up to heavyweight. Okan and Shota Umino, which obviously it's going to be anything with Umino is going to be fascinating now. Taichi and Sonata, if you're into that for some sick reason. Ichiban Sweet Boys defending against Rocky and Yo, which I'm not excited about after seeing Rocky and Yo work on this show.
I'm
not really getting into that.
No.
Young Bucks versus Hiromu and Naito, of course. Takeshita defending against Oleg Bolton. That sounds like a cool match. Yota Tsuji defending the global title against Gabe Kidd. That is a huge match. And I will say this about Gabe Kidd and Ishii, because I didn't talk a ton about it. That's 2 in a row now for Gabe Kidd.
Yep.
Expressing himself the way he needs to. He just comes across like a dangerous killer. The shtick is turned down. The aura is turned up. The try-hardness is turned down. He needs to stay right here in this lane.
I agree.
And the sky is the limit.
He's got it. Yeah, he's got it. He finally figured it out how to harness that energy, but do it in a way where it's not try hard and eye rolly like it was before. And he's done it.
Right.
So hopefully he sticks with it because it's there. And this is the vibe. This is what he did in the Kenny match. Is the vibe, and the Ishii match. That's the vibe. That's it. That's the superstar. That's the superstar way to go about it.
Yeah. He's added weight, but like good weight. He's like thick he's like this thick fucking hoss almost now.
He looks like a guy who will kick your ass. Like, you look like that's a guy that when he enters the room, you're like, fuck, that dude, that guy's unhinged and he could kick everyone's ass. I don't like that.
He's got
I'm
dangerous
nervous.
energy.
Nervous. Yeah.
Dangerous energy. He's like, yeah, the guy at the bar who you're afraid he's just going to start a fight with somebody if they say the wrong thing and no one's going to be able to stop him. That's the energy he needs to continue to harness, and that's what he's done the last couple of matches. So I'm really looking forward to see if it carries over here. And fuck, man, why not have him win? I know, like, Tsuji, you're trying to push him too, but I don't know. Kid feels like he's on the brink of
Gabe's
something.
closer to it than Tsuji is. So I would. Tsuji has his time eventually. I would ride that momentum with Gabe. I would.
They've kind of stamp approved Tsuji already, though. He's had an IWGP title shot. He beat Umino the last time I think they faced each other. I don't know. I feel like Kid almost needs it more. So from that standpoint, and then Saber versus Goto. I'm not totally locked in on this, but I saw some chatter that maybe they should do a draw. I don't understand the mindset behind that. Zack Sabre Jr. should submit Hiroki Goto in the center of the ring. That's the only.
Why?
I saw people talking about that. I don't. What are we doing? Like, I like Goto as much as the next guy.
Guys.
But
come on.
He's here to lose, man. And Sabre is not a hot champion. He's not a drawing champion. He's got to keep winning matches. This is a challenger of the month. You know, he just needs to beat this guy. So, I'm not going to tell you. If Goto hits a Ushi-Goroshi and wins the title, I'm not going to pop through my fucking roof.
Yeah. Are you kidding me?
You know, so anyway, that's
I should note the other New Beginning shows. There's a bunch of it's actually a pretty good tour. There's some pretty good matches and pretty good shows. Night 3 is going to have a never openweight title match. Tanahashi Bolton and Yano defending against Ren Narita Sho and Yujiro Takahashi's No Evil. Obviously, he's off this tour, I believe, in full. So that's on night 3.
Maybe they're ditching the gimmick. Maybe after all these years, they're ditching the gimmick.
Fine with me.
When he was on the Indies as Takaake Watanabe, for a little while, he was doing this thing with like a leather jacket and like he was just like a street tough. Like, and I thought that really worked for him. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll be. Who knows? It might even just be something silly.
Night 5, they have a 10-man tag elimination main event. It's chaos. It's Goto, Yo, and Yoshihashi, El Desperado, and Tomoyaki Hanma versus the full TMDK. Hartley Jackson, Kosei Fujita, Robbie Eagles, Rohei Oiwa, and Zack Sabre Jr. So that's kind of a fun little match there on night 5. Night 6 has El Phantasmo versus Jeff Cobb for the New Japan World television title.
After the double count out.
Yep. Night 7 has Desperado versus Kosei Fujita for the junior title. Night 8's just a bunch of tags and stuff, and then night 9's a bunch of tags as well as leading up to
those are smaller. Those aren't.
These are in random
four stops. Yeah,
but good little tour.
And then after that's Fantasticomania, so which will have more juice because more people are into the CMLL, similar to last year. So we'll see who's on that. They haven't announced who's on that, right?
Fantasticomania, I don't think they've announced the names yet. No.
Yeah, in Osaka.
No names. I don't think. Yeah. We'll probably get the names in Osaka for sure. All right, and that concludes all that. So now let's move on to the FSM 50, and we'll get out of here tonight on the flagship. FSM 50 released earlier today by voicesofwrestling.com. I was on the panel. Joe, you are a senior executive advisor. You can read all the panelists and all the voting and all the background of it on voicesofwrestling.com. I'll put a link in the show notes as well. But FSM 50 is out, and Will Ospreay has won yet again. What's your reaction to Will Ospreay yet again, number 1 on the FSM 50? Now, this makes, let me get the exact numbers here. I just wrote his piece. There's a profile a little bit ago. This is 1, 2, 3 straight for Will Ospreay and his 4th overall number 1 in the FSM 50. So he 2022, 2023, 2024, number 1. He was also number 1 in 2019. He was number 7 in 2020, number 7 in 2021, number 3 in 2018, number 6 in 2017, number 3 in 2016. And then he was out of the top third. He was 20th in 2015, and then 50 in 2014. So the guy has been in the top 50 since 2014 and has been in the top 10 since 2016 and has 4 wins.
I mean, it's impossible to argue with. He's the best wrestler in the world, but I will say this. As I was looking back at Bryan Danielson's year when I was writing up his write-up, I wouldn't have been opposed to Danielson being number one either. I really think it was a coin flip. I think there's a bad taste in some people's mouths when it comes to Bryan Danielson's title reign. And I think there are some people who didn't like that Danielson got a little too heavy-handed with like the dream match stuff for him. There's people who were upset he wrestled Nigel. I don't understand that. I love that match. I love that they did that match. But look, there's probably some people that have no emotional connection to ROH that didn't give a fuck about that match and felt like it was out of place, especially after he had just been choked out. It was after one of the attacks from the Death Riders, wasn't it? So from that standpoint, I think people were, look up when that match took place. It was after they attacked him after the Jack Perry match, wasn't it?
So
I got my timelines all.
Yeah, it's kind of wonky.
Here's my point, though.
Yeah.
My point here is this isn't really about like how someone was pushed or what you thought of their title reigns or anything like that. This is strictly performance-based, this list. This is for the nerds. This is for people who like, wrestling fans who like wrestling. And match quality is the predominant factor here. And when I look at Bryan Danielson's matches this year, he was every bit as good, I think, as Ospreay, especially when you consider that he did have all those really cool TV matches and bucket list matches against all of those opponents that he wanted to shoehorn in there before he, had his unofficial, full-time retirement or whatever, whether it was Yuji Nagata or going to Arena Mexico to finally wrestle Blue Panther or, Jun Akiyama or Katsuyori Shibata or Hechicero on Collision.
He had a really, really fun year. He had a really fun year. When you go back and look at it, you realize, oh my God, what a fun year he had.
On top of all of the great matches that we don't, the Will Ospreay match and set all that stuff aside, the Owen Hart tournament run and all of that. He had that match against Satnam Singh, which was a really fun and interesting TV match. And he just really had the match against Jeff Jarrett, like the no DQ match against Jeff Jarrett. And, on top of the Okada matches and the Ospreay matches and the Swerve Strickland matches, he really had a great fucking year. So I wouldn't have been opposed to him being number one at all, is my point. But obviously I'm fine with Ospreay because I do think he's the best wrestler in the world.
The top 10 here, Will Ospreay number 1, Bryan Danielson number 2, Konosuke Takeshita number 3, Zack Sabre Jr. number 4, Sari number 5, Yamato number 6. Yamato hadn't been on the list since 2021, back on the list here at number 6. Hechicero debuts on the list for the first time, number 7. Yuma Anzai is 8, Shingo Takagi is number 9, and Kyle Fletcher, his debut on the list, is number 10. I think the interesting one, Kyle Fletcher there, I think did you do the write-up on Kyle Fletcher? I forget, but whoever did the write-up on Kyle Fletcher, noting that he has entered the FSM 50 in the top 10, and he will probably be in this spot for a long time moving forward.
Right.
Get used to this guy. Get used to this guy in the top 10.
Yeah, he might be a frequent. I will say that overall, I thought this was the best and most balanced list that we have ever produced since Voices of Wrestling has been hosting it. In those years, I think there have been years where I haven't been happy with the list at all. I think there have been years where it's way too Dragon Gate heavy, way too many Dragon Gate wrestlers. And there's been way too many Joshi some years. This year, I thought it was the best and most balanced list where I had, when Alan sent me the final and asked me to go over it and make suggestions on little tweaks, move someone up, move someone down, fight for somebody to be put on, I had almost no gripes. I had little minor gripes. I thought Hechicero was a little too high. I don't think he was the 7th best wrestler this year. But do I think it's like super egregious? No. So I didn't fight too hard to move him down. Yamato, I think he's way too high, but I get it. I thought that Luke Jacobs at 16 was probably a little too high, but belonged on the list. And then outside of that, I didn't have major problems. I pushed for David Finlay to be on the list a little. I think he's the biggest snub. But as Alan and I were discussing it to pull the curtain back, the votes just weren't there. He had some votes, but he didn't have enough votes to justify putting him on ahead of some of these other people who just had stronger voting totals, and it was hard to find a way to get him on. Do I think David Finlay was one of the 50 best wrestlers this year? I think he was, and I think he was easily. But that's me. That's why we have a panel. And a lot of the panel didn't think so. And he just didn't have enough support. I do think he was the biggest snub. So a couple other minor thoughts. I did fight for Go Shiozaki. He wasn't on some of the initial early drafts we had, but then I implored people to go watch the stuff. Didn't try to influence it any more than that. I said, go watch the matches. Here's the matches, the 0-1 matches. And it did sway a couple of the voters enough to where he ended up sneaking on at number 46. I thought it was important to have the Saito brothers on there. I thought it was important to have Axiom and Nathan Frazier on there. And outside of that, I really thought it was the best and most balanced list we've had in such a long time. It wasn't overrun with all these Dragon Gate guys, which in some years I thought we were just too many. I mean, if Dragon Gate was really that good, they wouldn't be in the business hole they're in. Let's be completely honest about it. So there was really a great balance of worldwide wrestling here. This is the most proud I've ever been of a list. So you can look at it two ways. Me being the senior executive advisor made all the difference, or me not voting made a difference. So you could look at it either way. Maybe it was a combination of both. Maybe without my dopey 50 influencing things, or maybe me overseeing everything. Either way, I really think we did a really great job this year, and I'm really super proud of the list.
Some of the things I thought was really interesting about this list this year was some of the people that did not make it that were very high last year. So John Moxley was number 4 last year, and he had been 4 in 2022 and 2023, did not make the list in 2024. Kazuchika Okada, now that was a big point, and Alan Farrell. And now Okada got an honorable mention on the FSM 50, and Alan wrote that it's pretty wild to look at the history of the FSM 50 and where Okada has been. So in 2014 he was number 2, 2015 he was number 3, 2016 and 2017 he won it both years. Well deserved, by the way, for both those years. 2018 6, 2019 4, 2020 8, 2021 9, 2022 2, 2023 6, 2024 off the list, not even the top 50, and it's kind of deserved, which sucks. And that's kind of Ellen's point, is like, what the fuck happened? I mean, think about where Okada was and where he is now in how we ranked out this thing. Yeah, he was debated.
I would have had him on personally. I find it hard to believe he wasn't one of the 50 best when you really dig into his matches. He had more great matches than people think, but it's also hard to ignore the stink of a lot of his lazy performances.
And I think that's and that tends to happen a lot with this FSM 50 is like a guy's. It's sometimes it's like, yeah, I could vote Okada number 50, but I also want to sort of make a statement that, this guy really shit the bed in AEW for the most part and got real lazy in AEW. So you know what? I'm not going to vote him in this top 50. I'm going to give my vote instead to Soberano Jr., someone like that, and give a little bit more love to one of those kind of guys, a Templario type, guys of that, ilk, and instead of giving, a token number 48 vote to, Kazuchika Okada.
Yeah. I can't, again, he would have been somewhere on mine, but I'm not like aggrieved, that he didn't make the final 50. I think it's fair. Again, I think for me, David Finlay was the biggest, what's the word I'm looking for?
Just snub. Yeah. Left off.
I think Willow Nightingale, you can make an argument, should have gotten more support. But it's hard. 50 wrestlers, it's hard.
That list fills up quick. If you put it down, that list fills up very quickly. You don't realize it.
People are very quick to say, oh, so-and-so should be on. Where's so-and-so? Okay, sit down and write a list of 50. Do it, and you'll see how hard it is. And you'll see the level of wrestler that gets left off. It's not easy, okay? Fuminari Abe was someone who got debated hard. And ultimately, Alan, he dug his heels in and said, no, I don't see it. And then, he opened it up. He gave people an opportunity. All right, well, if I'm wrong, I want people to advocate, and no one was able to advocate super hard for him. So Abe had a good year, but it wasn't good enough for the top 50. So we put him in the honorable mentions. It's it's not. It's easy to look at these things and complain, and that your favorite wrestler wasn't in it, or that someone obvious wasn't in it, until you do sit down and try to limit it to 50.
And try to take in the entire wrestling world, which we try our best to do, to take in the entire wrestling world. It might be easy to say, well, I only watch AEW New Japan, and here's my live 50, and you left this guy. Okay, well, add in Joshi, and add in Lucha, and add in Japanese Indies,
Europe.
And add Europe. Okay, it's a little tougher. Gets a little tougher.
Yeah, because those spots start to get eaten up, and you really have to make tough decisions when you're putting together a list or you're assessing a list. But this year, I haven't seen as many complaints as usual. Not that I care about the complaints, only because they got posted on Reddit, and those people are just complaining about the lack of WWE. So those aren't real complaints. What those people don't understand is not everything is for you. It's the Pearl Jam song, not for you. WWE, please, they get enough flowers. This is a boutique project that isn't for WWE fan who dabbles in a little AEW and TNA. You have enough things to throw flowers at what you like. This is an ultra deep in the weeds boutique project of people who appreciate worldwide wrestling and are going to push forward what they thought was the best wrestling this year. And unfortunately, that wasn't going to include a boatload of WWE wrestling, because when you approach it from the criteria we're approaching it from, and when you're watching the amount of wrestling that our panel is watching, it just ain't going to make the cut. Go read SI's year of the end of the year stuff. Go read.
Right.
There's plenty of places for you to get. You want to go. Uncrowned.
Uncrowned. That's it. Yeah.
There's plenty of places to go where they're just going to focus on the two promotions that you watch, and they're going to put over the Jey Usos and the Rhea Ripleys, and those kind of people aren't going to cut it on a list like this because their work wasn't good enough. And not everyone, this isn't meant for you. And not everyone is our audience, and that's okay. And we're not an outlet for you if you think that, the one guy, I saw one comment saying, how can there be 36 people that had a better year than Cody Rhodes? All right, well, you just don't understand the criteria. Quite honestly, you're lucky Cody Rhodes was on the list at all. Because if it wasn't for people like me and the few people that voted for him advocating for Cody Rhodes, he wouldn't have been on the list. You don't think he was one of the top 50. We talked about that last week.
Right.
So it's like, this isn't for you if that's the way you think. I happen to value his matches early in the year against, your Gunthers and your AJ Styles series, some of the Nakamura TV stuff. But quite honestly, Cody Rhodes was no lock to make this thing. And he got on there at 35, and I'm sure you think that's way too high.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Definitely. You probably wouldn't have had him in your 50 at all.
I think I did have him in the 50, but he was much lower. I think I had him in the high 40s and maybe right at like 48, 49, 50, somewhere in that range.
Yeah, and when the majority of the criticisms I'm seeing are, who are these people on the list? Well, then your opinion means nothing. You can't complain about a list if you don't know 40 of the people, so how can you say they're not good?
I know, that was good. There was a great comment. The guy was like, I don't know who all these people are. How do I even watch this shit? How does anybody even watch this shit?
It's bad list. Well, then you don't have an opinion then.
Dope.
You can't have an opinion. Yeah. If you watch the NFL, but you just watch the Cleveland Browns every week because that's all you care about, which is fine, and you don't watch any other team, you don't have a say in the All-Pro team.
Right.
Because you only watch one team. So that's, so those, so I think the lack of controversy, quote unquote, not that it's ever like, lists like this are always made to be disagreed with, but I think the lack of quote unquote controversy speaks to the point. I was so excited when we finally settled on the final list. I really think this was the best job we've done. Since
it's got a good balance of American wrestling talent, Joshi, Lucha, Europe. I think it's everything is represented in there a little bit. I mean, deathmatch might be a little low, but we have deathmatch guys on there, in the panel, and nobody really, aped for any deathmatch guys as far as right. Right? Like no one really said, "Oh, this guy's got to be on there" or whatever. I don't think he was even a great year.
No, that's the thing. If someone gets advocated for super hard, it gets taken under consideration by Alan and the senior executive advisor. And more often than not, we're either going to find room for him or have him in the honorable mentions. But again, that's the thing. If you want to say, oh, there's a lack of deathmatch, I don't, Joey Bay was back this year and he watched all that stuff and he put in a list. And, Alan chooses the voting panel based on, okay, how am I going to get the most well-rounded opinions? Right. And it's like, all right, I already have a guy who pays super attention to, like, Ian Hamilton is going to advocate for European wrestlers. Joey Bay is going to advocate for death matchers and independent guys. Joe Gagney's there because he literally watches everything and can give balanced, Gerard DiTrolio is there, even though he's not related to Finn, but he's going to be locked into Noah and All Japan and all the Japanese. So we have a wide breadth of people. We have the Joshi experts. We have Case Lowe, who's going to make sure all the Dragon Gate guys are 3 spots higher than they should be. We have everyone.
3 spots, 10 spots.
I know, in some cases, geez. I mean, that one year where there was like 11 Dragon Gate guys, I'm like, geez, come on, this is awful. I lost that battle, but I was like, this is awful. But yeah, so that's the methodology behind who ends up on the panel. So you're getting that wide range. And, Case also, he's the Lucha guy too, because he's locked in on CMLL. And then we have the all-rounders, the people like Fred Moreland, who just kills himself to watch everything, and Jesse Collins, who is a curious wrestling viewer. And just, if someone tells him something's worth it, he's going to try it, So, people like Adam Summers, who have been around for fucking ages and know what they're talking about, So, and I guess Rich Craich too.
I was there
Rich
too.
Craich too.
I voted too.
Panelist Rich Craich. So that's the methodology behind it. And I really think this year it really produced an awesome balanced list. And then even, the list of people who got at least one vote, you can see where, if you're like, oh my God, why isn't so-and-so there? And then you look down, they probably got votes. It's just hard. It's hard to crack a list of top 50. It's
hard out there, man. The top 25, I just looked this up. Of the top 25, 13 people in last year's top 25 did not even make the list this year. Yeah. Think about that. I mean, that is tumultuous. As far as the list in general, here there are 29 people that were on last year's list that did not make this year's list. That it's tough. It's not easy. The top of the top 15, Jon Moxley, Yume Aoyagi, Okada, Fuminori Abe, Kenny Omega, Teton, Orange Cassidy, Nakajima, Kakuta, Julia. All those were on the top 15 last year. 10 of them in the top 15 last year, not on this year's list at all. That's hard.
Yeah. Well, make cases for any one of them then.
Right.
See, that's the thing. If someone has a problem,
make the Orange Cassidy case. Make the Orange Cassidy case.
Yeah. Why? Exactly. And maybe you have one, and maybe you'll come up, and maybe
I would love to hear someone's Nakajima case. I would love to hear someone's 2024 Katsuhiko Nakajima case. I would love to. Bring it on, please, Gleet superfan. Bring it on. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. It's like in sports where people argue over all-star teams. It's like, well, you can't put everyone. You got to take someone off if you're putting someone on. So if you're going to make a case for someone being snubbed, you got to tell me who they should replace. And if you're going to say, oh, I'm going to replace, Miyu Watanabe, it's like, all right, well, she was 48th. It's like, so it's like in that case too, it's all right. I'm not going to fight too hard if someone thinks, I'll use your Orange Cassidy example, had a better year than Robbie Eagles. He was 47th, and he was there because we appreciate, the clean and crisp nature of his work. It's not like Robbie Eagles had a bunch of fucking match of the year contenders. You know what I mean? So there's people who get on who we want to recognize and make sure get recognized for in certain ways too. And that also applies to the honorable mentions in a lot of ways. It's not, someone asked this in the Discord and I'll answer it here too. The honorable mentions are not number 51 through 60. That's not how those are chosen. The honorable mentions are just a collection of people who we think are worth acknowledging, even though they didn't make it because they had a notable year, or people who are interesting to discuss, like Okada, right? That's interesting to discuss because he's always been so high, and this year he didn't make it. They're all people who receive votes. They're all people who got some level of support in the honorable mentions, but they're not necessarily the next 10 or whatever. That's not how it works. even the top 50 itself is not just a straight statistical ranking. We use the votes to then craft the list.
And then argue, who would go
and then
where,
argue about it, and people advocate. Exactly. So anyway, I was very pleased with it this year. And if people want to discuss it in the Discord, there's a whole channel dedicated to it. So that was the FSM 50.
There it is. My favorite thing, I'm looking in past ones, I love that in 2020, Go Shiozaki won our FSM 50 in 20, and he just fucking deserved it.
That was that GHC title run where he was
he was the best COVID wrestler by far. Go Shiozaki. I love that he was number one. That shows you right there. That's our list versus everyone else's list. Is Go fucking Shiozaki number one in 2020. Fucking love it.
Go find any of these other outlets who were recognizing his work that year.
Yeah.
That's why I think this is why I wanted to keep this thing alive when the magazine died. Okay? Because we have to keep this flame alive. And I talk about this a lot. In a wrestling world which is being just consumed with, I guess, what would be the term? Popularism? I don't even know how to phrase it.
Populist thoughts or whatever, or mainstream, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Only the mainstream is good. Nothing else matters, which is so against what smarkdom, for lack of a better term, used to be about. It used to be digging in and looking for, wrestling that wasn't mainstream and on the surface and recognizing everything that was great, whether it was national television wrestling or whether it was an indie in Japan that draws 50 fans a show, or whether it was indie lucha or whatever the case. Who else is doing this but us? We have to keep this flame alive. There has to be an outlet out there somewhere where that recognizes when Go Shiozaki is the best fucking wrestler of the year instead of just handing it to Roman Reigns, because it's people who don't watch anything and don't appreciate pro wrestling. So we need to exist and we need to keep the flame alive. And I believe that this type of wrestling analysis, the world that we live in, our audience, like I just said, a lot of these, not everyone's your customer, and that's okay. That's something I espouse in business all the time. Not everyone is your customer, nor do they have to be. But we have to keep this flame alive for the like-minded people who love worldwide pro wrestling, because no one else is doing it, Rich. No one else is doing it. And it's important historically. I'm so glad you brought that up, that Go Shiozaki's 2020 is recognized forever.
Yep. Number one.
People can look back and remember what a great year he had, because no other outlet on earth would have done that. They wouldn't have had him in their top 10. They wouldn't have had him in their top 50.
They wouldn't have listed him, for God's sakes. Let's be honest.
Exactly. So that's why it's important to keep projects like this alive. That's why it's important that we have our match of the year. And we do keep it somewhat exclusive with people who cover wrestling, even if it's just a blog that nobody reads. There's got to, we keep some standards to it because it's important. Otherwise, everything is just whatever SI is telling you, or the guys at Uncrowned who watch 3 different promotions or whatever. And I'm not necessarily even burying that. There's plenty of room for mainstream awards and accolades and all that, but there has to be room for this too. There has to be room for this too. Historically, we can't let people 50 years from now really think that Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill were the best tag team this year. We can't let that be the prevailing thought for people 50 years from now. Right. It's fucking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So, anyway, that's why I think the list is important.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it. By this time next week, we should have some clarity on the Voices of Wrestling Match of the Year list. By the way, if you were listening to this and you are a member of the pro wrestling media in any way, whether you do a podcast, a blog that nobody reads, like Joe said, or even a blog that somebody reads, as long as it's related to pro wrestling and it's in the media, you got a YouTube channel, you have a podcast, you have a website, you do reviews, whatever it may be, as long as you're doing something in the pro wrestling media and you have not received a ballot yet, make sure you go to voiceswrestling.com/MOTY request, MOTY request, or just find me, message me however you want. voiceswrestling.com/MOTY request is probably the best way to do it. Fill out that form and we will make sure that you get a ballot sent to you before voting is due. So we got about a week out now for voting to conclude. And then obviously the last week of January, we'll reveal the top, the full list. But a lot of votes coming in, a lot of first-time voters. Always love to see that. A lot of new people jumping on in. So pretty excited to see how it all shakes out. We have a number one pretty much pulling away. We'll see if anything else can.
I haven't even looked at it yet.
Yeah, you might be surprised by the number one. I'm slightly surprised by how much the number one is pulling away. But yeah, it'll be a lot of fun when you take a look at it, and I think people are gonna be very happy. The thing that I always love, a lot of number ones, a lot of like there's been I think 110 ballots that have come in, and there's like 40 different number ones or something like that, which I always love. That because it's perfect. Then people coming in from all walks of life, voting, like you said, voting for things that they truly believe in, and not just going with the popular, the front runner, mentality of it's main event of WrestleMania. It's got to be the best match. Like no, this person thinks this random match that happened in fucking in IWA Puerto Rico is the best match of the year. Fine, great, love it, perfect. Talk about it, and then they write about it, and then there's a big blurb where they say this is why this is my favorite match of the year. This random match that happened in Puerto Rico. That's what I love.
Yeah. Hey, look, I haven't looked yet. I don't need to see it to tell you that Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns finishing the story isn't going to win our poll.
It will not.
Okay.
It will definitely not.
And nor should it. And that's going to win plenty of other match of the years and other places and other main, and that's fine. And again, I'm not going to repeat the same rant. It's important that wrestling fans, true wrestling fans, still have a place and have places where where that kind of match isn't going to challenge for a match of the year because it's utterly ridiculous.
And those places are fewer and fewer than ever, and that's scary.
So it's important to keep that alive, and that's this stuff. It may sound silly to some people, but it matters to me. It matters to me because it's the kind of wrestling fandom that I grew up on, and it's slowly disappearing, and again, I do think this is probably a phase. I think all these things, it'll probably swing back. But yeah, so yeah, the match of the year, very similar to the FSM 50 and what I think our particular match of the year. The Observer one is always going to be number one. No one's ever going to overtake the Observer match of the year. That one means the Tokyo Sports match of the year. That's always going to be more important than our little poll. But I like to think that our poll has carved out its little spot, and I'm putting it no worse than the third most important match of the year that gets named on a yearly basis. There's no other match of the year that you can make an argument for that's more important than ours, other than if you want to make an argument for the Observer or the Tokyo Sports. That's it. I won't accept an argument for any other.
No, and what I love about ours is how varied it is, and the fact that we take in all these votes, and it's not like I go, okay, and delete all these other ones and just give you the top 10. Like, you get literally every fucking match that finished anywhere. You get a little, at least a little write-up about, or it gets its own little highlight. You know what I mean? Every single match that gets voted on. And I think that's pretty important too, and not just say, all right, well, here's the top 5. You know what I mean? Like, that's, other places will kind of do that. We do not. We will list everything, whether it's 250 matches, 300 matches, whatever it may be. And it's gonna be a lot this year, I'll tell you that. I'm looking at it right now. There's a lot of matches getting voted on right now. So hard to say exactly, if we're going to set a record again in terms of voters. We usually do. If we're going to set a record again in terms of matches voted on, we usually do. We'll see. It's hard to say a week out, but where we're at right now, the pace is very, very good to set those records. So again, like I'm said, if you're sticking with the show, you're listening to this right now and you're a part of the wrestling media and you have not voted, make sure you get at me as quick as possible so we can make sure we get you a ballot so you can vote. But all right. That is it for us on the Flagship this week. Again, flagshippatreon.com for all that bonus audio we talked about. Thursday Dynamite review, tour of the territories, my look at the 1983 territories in America. Rumble Rewind, got only a couple more Rumbles to go, and then I'm going to wipe my hands of the Rumble Rewind and never go back to it ever again. Not that I hate doing it, but I'll have completed them. I'll have done every single Royal Rumble ever in that series. So that is all up at flagshippatreon.com. Write-ups as well. Plenty of stuff available to you at flagshippatreon.com. You can go back and listen to Wrestle Kingdom, Wrestle Dynasty, Instant Reaction Lives, rave reviews for both of those shows as well. Also the Netflix, Raw Netflix debut, which a lot of people have called the best show we've ever done. And I don't know. I won't say I disagree. I think that was a very fun show. It got real silly, but pretty damn good. Yeah, that's all available at flagshippatreon.com and voiceswrestling.com/discord as well. If you want to join the conversation on our Discord, that is how you can do it. So that is it for us. That is Joe. I'm Rich. We'll talk to you guys next time on the Flagship Podcast. Take care. Bye.
Hey now, it's Mike Gilbert, host of the Mike and JD Show, right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Join JD by God Oliva and myself every Thursday night live on the Voices of Wrestling YouTube channel at 11:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we stay up all night discussing all the hottest stories in professional wrestling. You can also check us out right here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting feed, or you can subscribe to the Mike and JD Show feed. Now, enjoy the show.